So yeah, there's just no way that Sentinels don't make it out this group, and very likely they just come out first seed with very little trouble to do it.
Let's for the sake of present company give Envy the win there in this match.
Cheers.
As we're playing this bracket out.
That would be a spicy match though if it were to come up, man.
Maybe get an understanding for scale of this whole tornado of dicks. Just have a listen.
No one even knew who the Solaris was. You don't need us to know that you failed in a contract negotiation that we didn't even know that existed. What do you mean?
It's not a look.
Just shut the fuck up and move on with your life. We don't need to tweet about it.
All right, let's talk about what we got on the show today, guys, because we've got a little bit to cover. Obviously, new map this week was teased. Really interesting. Obviously, there's a fucking timer here still. Get off the screen. Get off the fight. I don't need to be fucking kept to 1 minute. Anyway, we had a Fracture. Really interesting map. Obviously, a lot of features of it that are quite unique, and we'll get some takes from pros and other people on that one. Then we're going to talk about, what we should expect to see from North America. So a deeper dive into the NA region. We're going to be bringing Mike's HD, of course, onto the show here to give his expert take on that, especially someone so close to Envy and some other teams. Cracking on there as well. We want to talk a little bit about the situation in China, not the political one, you idiots. No, we're talking about obviously the impending release of Valorant over there and the situation with FPX. They're dropping a bunch of players. We knew they were looking for some players as well. So we're going to go back and catch up with Munchables on that one, who is a caster working in China on the LPL presently. And then we'll talk about ESIC. More news about ESIC and collaboration between Riot and that organization to try and find the bad guys. There it is. I had 2 seconds left. Fuck you.
Oof.
Can't believe it.
It's getting closer, though. It's getting closer. 20 last week, 2 seconds this week. That means we get a lot of news this week.
Yeah, I could just do this show in fucking 1-word increments, and we could just blast through it if you want.
That sounds
fine.
like
I don't mind.
Sounds like Vietnamese speaking.
Right. So let's talk about Fracture. Right. Now, from what I could tell, you had access to it on the PBE, but it looked like Riot definitely ran some sort of event for content creators to sort of stream it all day. I mean, they cast the net so far and wide that Bren was part of this. So let's talk about that first of all here. The concept behind the map looks really interesting. Obviously, there's plenty of Easter eggs. Looks like some kind of fucking reactor or something. But a lot of content creators were invited to play some customs on this map all day and give some of their thoughts, give some of their impressions here. Really interesting map. Again, it's one that this duality concept, guys, is really starting to get fleshed out more. Think about the map split. Now think about this map as well. And also the fact that, these agents are discovering their mirror images, and you're starting to realize that this must be some sort of parallel universe convergence going on in the Valorant world, and that Radiant, is potentially catalyzing this crossover between those planes of existence. So that's interesting. I think they're doing a great job of just slowly fleshing that out. But can we just talk a little bit about the map lore aside for now, because it is very unique, Vans.
Yeah, definitely. I think to start things off, Valorant is probably the map the game for me, that started to try to be a little bit more intrigued about the lore and learn about this, right? So if you're looking at this overhead view here, the left and the right, what's on the left side, if I'm not mistaken, is called the Alpha, or also known as Earth 1, while what we have on the right side is called the Omega, which is just Omega. So it seems to look like Valorant is working within a multiverse. And as you mentioned, Uber, this duality probably is stemmed from this reactor core in the middle. So what I do like about it is when we first looked at the video in the beginning, we had that bullet that came out, right? So the assumption here, at least for me, is that it's a bullet that comes from the latest agent called Deadeye. There's a couple of Easter eggs in here that could make me think about a different lore, but if you're looking at the map itself in terms of competition, we could talk about that first. It actually does have like this L-shaped type of format where the defender spawn is literally in the middle of the map. What Average Jonas is doing right now is he's coming from the attacker spawn. So the attacker spawn has like these 2 zip lines where you could go back and forth during this freeze time, and then you could start pinching into the
but it takes you underneath the defender spawn,
correct,
right?
Correct. So the defender spawn is literally right in the middle right there, right? So during the buy phase, you go back and forth, and then once,
technically, you have... Sorry, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but technically, the attacker's spawn extends from north to south in like a line, because you can just use the zip line during buy time, right?
Exactly. So we talk about little gimmicks, right, on different maps. And I think the gimmick right now is the map itself, right? To have the defender spawn, to know that you're going to get pinched from both sides. Don't know from where exactly, because each site from A and B, there's just so many corridors that exist to get into these sites that you always have to watch your back. So I think that this map in itself is going to create a lot of aggression on this defender side. There's a lot of like this tug of war, push and pull, gain map control, and try to regain it back on these retakes if you're guessing the wrong site, for example.
So question I had is, I know that you could obviously use the zip lines in freeze time or whatever, I guess theoretically, to transition sides if you're the attacker. Do you all 5 start in the same spot though?
Correct, you do. So you start like, if you look at the mini map, you start like at the bottom of the map.
Okay.
And then the zip line during that 30-second, it's going to be like, okay, well, let's try to pinch in towards this A site, depending on what agent comp that we have. You two go on the other side, and let's try to crunch in.
Can defenders hear you taking the zip line during freeze time?
You cannot. You cannot.
Okay.
So that's going to be
so. I'm just
yeah.
sure.
So that's going to be a little bit easier in that sense for the attackers to set up. Although even if you were able to hear the zip line, you still don't know where it's going to be coming from, right? Because of this H format, there's like 4 choke points pretty much in the map.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this is definitely extremely unique, and look, you've got to hand it to Riot, because I don't really think this convergence concept has been explored really in TAC FPS.
No.
Yeah, definitely not. And Dust, you come from long-standing Counter-Strike, and we've never seen these types of maps either, right? I think like the most Acend is probably the latest map that came out, but it's still pretty one-dimensional. I don't know what you think about Vertical or Nuke, but this is definitely a big change for a tactical FPS.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one, because on the one hand, I respect Riot trying to push the envelope, trying to innovate, and trying to come out with new things. And this one doesn't even necessarily feel gimmicky. Like, the gimmicky would be like the shoot on Breeze, or like some of the other like little things, like even the teleporters.
Like
and how
the
those
lack of mid on bind, for example, what they tried to do.
But this is like not even necessarily a gimmick as much as it's like complete rehaul of the concept of a tactical FPS map. By, like you said, having these 2 different places that attackers can start from. The whole defenders starting in the middle. Like, this is a complete revamp, a complete retooling of TAC FPS. And so on the one hand, I respect that innovation. I respect that, rolling of the dice to try something different and to try to push the envelope. But on the other hand, I wonder, do you push it too far and do you create too much variance? There's already a lot of variance in Valorant when it comes to like agents and how those will change over time, and how weapons will change over time, and how teams will discover new things over time. And then just adding a map in itself into the map pool is a big change, even if it was just the basic map, you know what I mean? With no like crazy innovative stuff going on. So I just kind of wonder a little bit, like if there's a lot of moving parts, if that's going to make balancing really hard. And I'm just a little bit cautious on, if they push it too far in a situation like this. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah. Daniel, if you don't mind bringing up the mini map, at least for that screenshot, we could actually have an overhead bird's eye view of what that map's going to be looking like too, right? As we were explaining before with the zip lines. So again, if you're looking at the bottom side of your screen, it's basically where all the attackers spawn, right? On this mini map. Then those zip lines will allow you to go to the attacker side bridge, or you start off on what is on the B site, which should be the alpha. It's going to be confusing, but it's the alpha side of the map. And then the A side of the map is going to be the Omega side. And each corner, right? So either B tree on the bottom left of your minimap, the A hall, the A dish on the top right, or the B bench has 1 orb, where that's also going to be a change. I think the fights are going to be immediate, as you can see the orbs right now, right? As soon as the barriers come up, you see the orb pretty much in your peripheral. So there's going to be some aggressive fights, either or from attacker side or defender side, to make sure that you could capitalize on these orbs. And I think that it's actually quite important for this map, because I tweeted out firsthand that I feel like it could be like a Brimmy map or even a Killjoy map, just because you could actually just start farming up these orbs, and if the defenders are not fighting it against you, it covers so much of the site. Like, I think if you look at the B site itself, there's actually a corridor that goes under the site. And that corridor under the site, it's not wall bangable. You put the lockdown ult right there, and it covers the whole map, and it pushes all the way back. So what could maybe counter it is like raised paint shells. Sova's still going to be very important with trying to find your geometry to try to bank those arrows in there, or of course the Hunter's Fury. So I think there's still going to be a lot of like that type of ultimate importance for this map too, based on the ultimate orbs that are available across the map.
Yeah, I would say this map, like, very clearly so is going to be important. I think the Sentinels class is going to be very important. I think this is also a map that Yoru could actually show itself. Like, I think that you could do a lot of trickery with Yoru on this map just due to the complexity of, you know, the zip lining and just the whole attacker spawn different locations. I think you could do a lot maybe with Yoru to do some trickery on this map. That's for certain. The thing is, when you look at this map, like, in theory, the amount of choke points in each site aren't that different as far as like the number of them. It's just where they're located and then how you have to position yourself accordingly. So I feel like this is going to be a very retake heavy map as well.
Yep. Yeah, I do believe that for sure. And even the brimstone ult, sorry, pretty much covers the whole B site or the whole A site, depending on where you're standing. I know it doesn't cover the whole area of the lower A site, but you can't really turtle inside like these hiding areas. Like, let's say you're hiding in the corner at the bottom of the staircase, you're hiding somewhere behind arena boxes. If you're aware that your opponent has an orbital strike, sorry, that's available, you better make sure that you get out of the way. I feel that maybe Cypher as a Sentinel may not be as potent in terms of a Sentinel anchor that you want to play, but I think Killjoy is going to be still very, very good. Yeah. Which is why I wonder, again, we had like last week, like these leaks come out from this Killjoy nerf on that turret. I wonder if maybe that's the reason why, like, Killjoy is going to be overused potentially on a map like this. And then we want to try to make it a little bit easier to get into these sites. I don't know yet. We have yet to find out once we get into competition.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Yoru idea. I think you can combine that with what you guys said about it being very retake heavy. I think if you're a defender and you can actually get to the extremities of the map, you're in a very powerful position, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems a little bit, there's so many chokes that prevent you as a defender from really accessing the outer ring. But if you can get there, then you can really traverse that outer ring very easily, especially on the zip lines. I mean, mid-round, maybe that's pretty dangerous to do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a retake scenario, you can really come from a multitude of different positions. So, like, Yoru Ultimate, for example, like being able to circumvent, like, or just break out of the encirclement seems really powerful.
Yeah, I think you're totally right in terms of saying how retake, you know, you mentioned retake, and I think retakes are going to be very important on this map, as you both mentioned it, gentlemen, because I feel that if you're actually trying to turtle into a site, you're already missing out on a lot of map control already that the attackers could take from both sides of the map, right? So I think it's going to be one of those maps where the defenders have to be even more aggressive than they usually are. Yeah. Like for Ascent, I think for Envy, for example, kind of like showed how you could get a lot of success by rushing or working the extremities on defender side very well and still very much gain map control, or you could play it as well, turtling inside the site. I don't think turtling inside the site in this sense on this map is going to pay off because you need to gain one portion of the quadrants. Let's call it quadrants here. You got to take control of that to make sure you know where the attackers are coming from, and then you could play the retake for the areas where you didn't take over in the beginning.
I think it's going to be similar to Haven in that regard, where you're going to have to kind of roll the dice defensively on stacks and pushes on one side of the map, and then just play for retake on the other side. I think it's going to have that same dynamic.
I want to see Ascend play this map because they play triple flash for like a really retake heavy composition on Haven, where they just fucking throw all their flashes into whatever site they end up sort of going to. The game against Supermassive Blaze, right? They actually really stacked a lot of these sites quite heavily and played the gamble. And then if they were wrong, then it wasn't so bad because they just all flash at the same time from every entrance of B and just go for retake. So that's interesting. Oh, there's a bit of lore here, Van. We can talk about the lore now briefly because this actually adds a lot of color, I think, to this sort of map. And it's good, you know, it's not in your face. It's Easter egg
Yep.
But you notice a few things you might want to share with us.
Yeah, definitely. If we actually look at the screenshot, Daniel, of the attacker side Easter egg, right? So there's a card over here. What I'm thinking, what this lore is all about, right? Because we talk about the rumor is that the latest agent being Deadeye is the person that's going to be breaking this reactor with that bullet that we see at the beginning of the cinematics, right? So there is an Easter egg even outside of the map, outside the attacker spawn, where there's a case with Deadeye's like sniper rifle, whatever it is, and there's cameras, so he's like kind of doing surveillance. So I'm thinking that he stole this ID card from Paul, who has been the employee of the year for Kingdom on Icebox, but he stole this card to probably gain access into Fracture, into the reaction core, and basically break it. And if you look at the defender spawn, either you're standing on the alpha side or the omega side at the defender spawn, there's these emails that come out. And I think it's a conversation between Oren with Ruben on either side, one that they've already met and that they're actually looking to do some tests, and then the other one is like an introductory email that they're going to meet up with each other, if I'm not mistaken, for that too. So that means that this multiverse is also showing like some different things. Maybe the second multiverse, which is going to be that Omega side, probably has seen all the consequences of what has been going on. And maybe they're trying to prevent this reactor or break the reactor to prevent this from happening.
Is collaborating with itself across a interplanar boundary.
Exactly.
It's like a mirrored reflect. Like we're talking about Omega partners, right? And there's like an Omega half of the map. So
it's nerdy, but it's fun, man.
Yeah, it's cool. I can get down with it. Obviously that it explains that cinematic where Phoenix runs into himself, and they've done a very good well of making it reasonable now that like you could have agents playing against one another, right?
Yeah.
So Angel, now Angel's a pretty cerebral player, I think is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And if someone like him is really sort of being thrown for a loop about understanding this map, then they've done quite well. They've definitely challenged one of the greatest minds in Valorant, at least in Europe here, to stretch his brain matter. Lothar as well. I would consider Lothar to be, the kind of guy that loves to get in the weeds a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And he sort of, gives his take on the map. He likes the feeling of it. He mentions also, Dust, that Yoru could sort of be an option there as well, and it's very complex to him. So good early impressions, I think, from a lot of our sort of pundits in the community. I haven't played it. I know it's on the PvE. I watched the Plat Chat guys play some pugs on it. And it looked really, really good. So
yeah,
that'll be fun. I'm still I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still wrapping my head around Breeze though.
But you see, the thing is for me is that Breeze, even when you're looking at the few matches that already came out, for me, honestly, it's been looking pretty one-dimensional already of how the executions kind of happen. It's like, it's a must-pick to have a Viper right now in the map, at least in the current meta. It's almost a must-pick to have a Sage to help you cross into the ace like the plant. So, like, there's always going to be some of those agents where it's very similar to Icebox in these executions. But I feel that for this map, again, for Fracture, there's going to be different composition that you use. Like, I'll bring back my KO stonks. It takes out a lot of the radius when you're throwing that 0 point across the map. Killjoy's going to be still very good. Brimstone's going to be still very good. Viper could still be very good because there's still an open skybox. So you could do a lot of these post-plant matches too. So that I think it's going to mix a lot of different types of teams that are going to try different comps. And then we could slowly figure out what the meta is going to be, which that is going to be a lot more fun than trying to figure out already that, you already know what you have to pick on Breeze and Icebox. And by the way, sorry, just as a quick sidetrack. I had Leader Grev and somebody else in the chat, sorry if I skipped the name because the chat's scrolling so fast they don't even know, that they're saying it's Cameranian. There you go. So when I talked about the lockdown that could be placed into B, they mentioned that it was wall bangable, right, at some parts from the upper side of the site, which it does make sense because if you look at this at the lights, I just tested it in the server while we're talking. There is some spots that are wall bangable, but you actually have to act quick, right, to be able to get that right.
Okay. Overall, yeah, I don't know.
I love it.
It looks like a great map, Dust. I don't know what your sort of closing thoughts are on it, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, Max. I feel like the way it's constructed, it's not going to be like a map where you can just like have some type of bread and butter default and work it out. Like you're going to have kind of more like pre-planned game plans on exactly how you want to attack certain areas of the map, and that's on both sides of the map. And again, this is another map where you're going to need to have your retake protocols really well drilled. Because I feel like you're going to have to be doing a lot of that defensively on this map just because it's like too much to cover. You're going to have, just like Haven, you're going to have to kind of roll the dice a little bit on what you want to cover, what you want to push, what you want to stack. Or if you just want to play passively and spawn a little bit and just kind of watch maybe a couple of key like hallways and stuff like that from kind of closer to your spawn area, then kind of play off of that based on what you see. So yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of that type of stuff. And it's one of those things that's hard for me to comment too much until I actually see it played. And then I can kind of give more deeper thoughts at that point on like what needs to change or what might be going wrong. But I'm along for the ride because it's just so interesting. It's so different than any other TAC FPS map we've ever seen in gaming history. So
yeah. Watching sorry, Mitch, but just watching like the Platchide boys play, like you were mentioning before, like when the barriers come up and you could fight right away at Dish to try to get Orb or something like that too. I think it's just fun to see that you could get some really immediate fights. It's going to mix a little bit of the strategy and also like the young cracked aimers are the ones that could actually just do aim lab and just wreck it up too is going to be just fun to see how that's going to play out. in the first like 10 seconds of the round.
Yeah, I mean, again, the promotion of defense-sided aggression, I think, is really interesting. We really started to see it come out in the post-plant meta as like a response to that, and now, you know, as a necessity based on map design and trying to actually carve out a stake or some control of the map before you just get outmaneuvered is really important. So we'll see how that develops, ladies and gentlemen. But let's move on. We obviously on this show. Yeah, we talk a lot about North America as a region, right? It's because their time zone, the nationality of the host, and of course because, you know, it's such a talked about, it's controversial.
And because
region
Mitch
somehow.
Tears taste so good.
Yeah, exactly. He's not here to defend himself today, but I mean, I know what he'd be saying. Like, nah, dog shit, nah, yeah, nah. Let's talk about NA in particular, though. We're bringing on to the show once more, Mike S. High Definition. Welcome back, buddy. Great to have you here, man. Obviously, coach from Envy. First of all, man, thanks so much for coming back on the show. A bit short notice for you, man, but great to have you here to talk about some of these NA teams in greater depth.
Yeah, no problem. I'm back on the European, like, wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. sleep schedule again for scrims, so enjoying that.
God.
I was going to say, so he's running on gas right now, Mitch. He's running on fumes.
Yeah, to be honest with you, like, I was doing this when I was in Europe. I was on like the NA schedule, and that was also really bad. That was like, that was a wake up at 5 p.m.
Yeah,
and just like be a degen. So it's kind of easy to fall into that if you're a gamer, but it's a bit funky. At least out here, getting up early. You know what I mean? Mike, you're kind of living like one of them fucking Sigma mindset crypto billionaires, rise and grind, you know, day trader lifestyle. You know what I mean? So,
buy low at 3 a.m. Get your protein shake or whatever.
Yeah, living as close as possible to the stock exchange so you can microsecond beat.
Like 5 monitors.
All right. Hey, let's start with something close to home for you, Mike. So let's talk about Envy, and let's talk about them in the context of this group now. I'm not asking for scrim bucks, although some of the scrim bucks have been really interesting. I mean, you see them on Reddit, maybe we talk about it a little bit later on, but this is, for me, you know, on the face, I don't know if you feel the same way, Mike, probably ostensibly more straightforward than any of the other groups here. Envy, though, I think are a team that have really, really benefited from recent acquisitions, yourself included, of course. And, you know, I'm curious to get your thoughts at least on, you know, what you'd expect to see from some of their opponents here, because this Envy team's looking more well-rounded than ever now. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, so just like looking at the group, like obviously people are trying or just saying like we have the most straightforward group, like you said, but at the same time, it's just hard to say when you take these teams outside their region how they're going to perform, because like New Turn wasn't that big on the map last time and they showed up pretty well. My thing is like obviously for Vivo, our first matchup, everyone's talking about Heat. And I'm interested to see, like, is he like a really insane player, or is he just like a good player that kind of farms that region? Because his stats are unreal. And then the other teams like Crew and Zeta, like I'm hearing kind of the same stuff again about Crew, how they're doing well in scrims and all this stuff. But last time it seems like Nerves kind of got the best of them, so we'll see how that region does. It's just very weird, like, to see. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, rather, like how like LATAM, Japan, and SEA do. Yeah, like now that 5 months or so has passed, or 4 months probably, but be interesting to see what they have or haven't improved on in that time.
That's the thing for me for sure, because you look at Vivo Keyed or you look at Zeta Division. They haven't had the chance to play in Iceland, right? A couple of months back. So I think the nerves are probably going to hit them where it's, you know, Heat. I've mentioned it. Well, not mentioned it, but like we talked about it on with Upcomer to say that he is like the all-star player to look out for in Brazil. But we also had a couple of names that we gave the same thing for like Vikings and Sharks, right? And unfortunately, they kind of fell short. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some improvement not only within the region, but some improvement within the teams as well, because they were unfortunately underwhelming for the Brazilian side for me going into this tournament. But Crew, I think that could be the underdog team going into this bracket for sure because of that experience that they got.
They had giga scrim bucks in Iceland as well. This team. So here's our Group B predictions as well. So this is who we kind of expect to go through.
Thanks, Jinsu.
Good lord.
Bro, I'm telling you, man, at this point, it's just like she is completely blinded by her disdain for NA.
Even Mitch put us on there. That's
I mean, Yitsu turned up on the show with like a fucking Acend shirt, a G2 mask, mate. Like, just absolutely, just juice to the
unreal
gills on
amounts
it.
of copium.
Yeah, it's EU copium coming out her ears. Yeah, I mean, so okay, so Crew had Mats Crimbucks, I think, in Iceland as well. And what I'm hearing is actually they shit on G2 on Haven in scrims, right? So that is what we're dealing with right now. That's right, come on, that's what we're dealing with right now. We have nothing else. But all I'm saying is that this was consistent with what accompanied them in Iceland, is that a lot of people had high expectations for this team based on how they looked just in practice, and then they just choked on stage. There wasn't even a fucking crowd, guys. There was some fucking lights. They were in a sporting hall. You know what I mean? But they really seemed to struggle. So maybe what I find so strange about that, stay with me here, is because they had the wrong idea stylistically, like a few teams from that region in Iceland. They still had success, at least in some of these practice games.
They won pistols against Fnatic. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. But then let's talk about this Zeta division team then. Like, how much do we really know about them outside of what we've seen from them in the region? Because Crazy Raccoon were decent. Again, that was not a full Japanese national roster though, as well. That had like 2 South Korean players in there now, and I think
even 3 now.
3 now, maybe.
Yeah, 3 now with a 6-man roster.
Zeta division, also their merch is fucking lit, but it's resold out. That's a shame. Yeah, kind of drippy. What do we think about this team?
I know.
Go ahead, Mike. I'll let you start. Actually.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I know Josh or Sideshow rather keeps talking about Laz on Sova, so I'm interested to see how he does. And then I know everyone kind of like Heat has been saying like Takage is like, or is, I don't know if that's how you say his name, but has been like the other superstar for this team. So it's another thing where I want to see like how these guys do outside their region and see if they can pull off that kind of similar performance.
Yep. I agree. I think, and I've mentioned it last week as well for those 2 players, right? If you want to look out for 2 players in that roster, it's going to have to be Takage as that duelist and Laz. Even Laz, like he wasn't doing like the Hunter's Fury style that you saw from like Lakia when it was playing with Newturn or whatnot, but it's just
that's
like
a gimmick a little bit.
Yeah, he plays it pretty basic and he plays it very well. Like he's able to get the information that he needs for his team. But I think what adds a little bit more for Laz is that he's also able to frag. That's the most important part as well, that he doesn't necessarily have to be like that clutch type of player that's going to be the last one trying to come in like Hiko style. He could come in and frag with your team as well. And Takage could turn around over for the whole team. I feel that maybe even Zeta Division kind of plays like an LG style for me too, where you kind of have like Dazzle with the Sova setting everybody up, and then you have your boy Dre coming in as Arena. Even if he doesn't get first blood, he could still get 2-3 kills and then make the advantage come out here for your team. And I think Zeta Division actually provides that. That on top of the amount of utility that they're able to bring in as a team, like as a combination, like just an Astra and Breach combination to get kills on Ascent was actually quite nice. So I think based on that, that's why for me, I picked Zeta Division over Crew because they look better than Crazy Raccoon. And I think they have what it takes to upset this group. Like for me, naturally, Mike, I see Envy being number 1, but who do you think is going to be that second team coming out of that group?
Well, how much info do you really, are you really able to have at this point in terms of like inter-regional performance?
I mean, I'm sure Mike's watched some demos, so he knows.
Yeah, I feel like
no, he didn't. Those don't exist yet, but he did watch some YouTube VODs.
Yeah, pretty much.
I feel like Vivo should still be ahead of these 2 other teams, even if Crew having experience, just because I think it's hard even with that lane experience that they did have, because they did kind of just get rolled around, and then you immediately go back to your old region. I think it's very hard for like, well, it would be like 4 months or so to try to practice those things that you might have learned in those few weeks at Iceland and implement them against a region that, like, obviously you can kind of just do whatever and get
interchanging metagame.
Yeah. And yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Van Silly's gonna pick like Zeta Division to get like second in the group though, because I saw they played KO like 2 or 3 times at one point.
That's fucking wild. Yeah. For a moment, Mike, I actually thought that he was using some sort of intellectual sort of integrity right now. I think you've
yeah, man. Crow on the KO is dope, dude. Actually, no.
Right.
So that's the thing. They use a lot of stuff though for Zeta Division. It feels as though, like, I think through 3 different matches on the same map for the same tournament, they had 3 different comps. But that was basically was Takashi going to play like a Sky, then go to Arena? Is it going to be a Breach from Crow coming in from a KO? So they have a lot of those compositions that are available to be able to keep their opponents on their toes. But yeah, definitely the KO songs are there.
Right. I think it might be easier, I think, just because we just know nothing. And if I say Scrimbox one more time, Dust's head is going to fucking explode.
It really is.
All right.
Listen, man, Scrimbox are about as fucking worthless
instead.
as that last fucking ICO you fell from for your favorite TikToker. Like, it doesn't fucking matter, bro. Like, it doesn't matter. It never has mattered. I don't understand why people
I made fucking bank off Doge after it got on TikTok, man. They got pumped after it appeared on TikTok, and I fucking cleaned up. I'm not gonna lie. All right. No, fair enough. So let's conduct this segment through the eyes or through the lens of focusing on the N18 in these groups, right, and talking about them. So let's look at another group here, the one featuring the 100 Thieves. You guys know anything about the 100 Thieves? Yeah, sorry, Nate. All right, they are going against Havan Liberty here in this in their first match, but obviously they share this group with Gambit, who Nats has been pretty confident so far about that team in the last couple of weeks, especially leading up to this event.
I don't want to start first.
No. I'll come in here and say it. Like, I mean, obviously the 2 favorites in this group that stand out is going to be Gambit and 100 Thieves, right? And I mean, it's really because on the Gambit side of things, they have maybe one of the strongest support cores in the game, right? I mean, Shados and Nats are just absolutely nuts players as far as consistency. Shados has some of the flashiest aim I've seen in the game, period. And he comes from like that Sky roll. And then that's before you even get to someone like Defo, who's going to be able to be that impactful jet. Maybe not as consistent as Nats or a Shados, but still incredibly powerful. So I mean, point is they have the firepower, right? And the other big thing about Gambit is they have a massive map pool, man. Their map pool is so deep. Like, they are really, really good on virtually every map in the pool. They just don't play Haven, but everything else has gone well. The only other thing you might be able to mark against them is the fact that they haven't looked as impressive on Breeze, but it's still so early days, it's really hard to exactly know what that means. But the core maps they're very strong on outside of Haven, which they just don't play a lot. They are tactically very sound. They definitely have really good protocols for countering aggression, as well as just being able to be dynamic on the attacking side. They definitely have their bread and butter defaults ready to go and the protocols in place. They can speed up when they need to. They are a really well-rounded team. They're one of the best teams tactically that I've watched in the game, honestly, just on how careful they are and how calculated they are and where their talent comes from in those support roles. And then you have on the other side 100 Thieves that, again, they also have a lot of talent, but I'm a little bit concerned about their map pool, if I'm honest. I'm also a little bit concerned about the consistency of some of their star players as far as just, fragging form. But what is great about 100 Thieves is they're crafty. They are very crafty. Steel is always a guy who likes to press the limits, innovate, and come up with new stuff. And so with all this time to prepare, you better believe they're going to come out swinging with stuff. And this team has been known to innovate within the North American region on different setups and executes and things of that nature. How they've implemented Sage is far different than a lot of other teams did initially, for example. So they're a team that I know is also going to be strategically very sound. And again, as long as their key players actually show up and perform well, then I think that they are certainly going to be a very powerful team in this tournament. I know what I'm going to get from Asuna. I think my big question mark is, how's Ethan going to come out here and show up? And then I think, again, what type of form is Nitro going to appear on? Because at times he's been considered, before the Astra meta, he was considered the best Omen in North America and was a very consistent, strong player. He's had a couple of hiccups here lately, it felt like, in the Challengers playoffs. So for me, it just depends on what type of form they show up in. But they're going to make it out the group no matter what, in my opinion.
Against Havan Liberty, it would be a very close one, I think, looking at that one, too. I definitely have 100 Thieves going out, but as the second seed, I do agree with Dust. I feel like Gambit, for me, is they're just 5 duelists, and they're using the abilities of the agents as second tier. They're just so good on
I feel like you already said that because Nats frags like a monster on Cypher.
Not only him, a Cypher, and he does the same thing as a Viper on fucking Bind. They even have different types of agents, like a switch from Sovas from players to players depending on the maps too. So I think they're very, very versatile in terms of just their deep map pool, because they understand that they just need to frag out pretty much at the same time too. But I want to know, actually, Mike, what do you think about 100 Thieves running this KO during the qualifiers?
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty, like, I was going to mention, that's a pretty interesting card they can throw in here because everyone's looking at them and it's like, okay, you ran KO on Ascent, Haven, and Split. Against some teams, you, like, handled it pretty easily, and then against teams like us and Sentinels, it didn't go over that well. So it's like, except for Ascent when we threw that CU match. But the thing is, like, so do you come in playing the KO still, or do you change it up and you switch back to Sentinel and just get rid of like all that footage? Because that could be pretty handy coming into that group. Or maybe like they play KO for the first match, and then maybe it's them versus Gambit for the uppers, like most people would probably predict.
Yeah.
And then you switch back to Sentinels, just get rid of any sort of prep work they've done for you. And it's not like 100 Thieves are bad on the Sentinels, like Steel is nuts on playing like Cypher or Killjoy, so I feel like both of those are viable options for them, like going in.
Yeah, that's what kind of threw me for a loop about the whole KO thing is like exactly what Mike's was saying. I really felt like Steel was one of the craftiest Sentinel players on the Cypher and Killjoy in the North American region. Like, certainly you point to someone like Dapper on Sentinels who's incredibly gifted in playing that type of role, but I felt like Steel just had such good intuition in that role on like when to lurk, when to push, when to poke and prod, and be able to be impactful in those mid to late round situations on those timings. And it's not to say that he can't do those same types of things with KO, but I feel like with KO, you want to be more with the pack of players so that you can get the most out of your utility to set up your teammates. Whereas when he was on the Cypher of the Killjoy, he had a little bit more freedom to be that individual, like, you know, timing type player to go for like backstabs or just go for like really crafty stuff. And again, I felt he was one of the best in that role. Maybe you don't put him up there as far as like pure fragging numbers, but just the way he played the agents, I feel like he could have a substantial impact on the game. So that's kind of what threw me for a loop about the whole KO thing more than anything.
It's available. I like that it's available, that they can bring that out. And the thing is like Dust is talking about how 100 Thieves, you know, we're afraid of their map pool. But I think for 100 Thieves, they didn't feel like they needed to bring too much of that map pool either, right? So I think there's still that question mark on Bind. I know Mike's is smirking because he's probably tried some stuff on Bind with 100 Thieves potentially, but I feel that this could be like a trump card versus other teams that are unfamiliar with 100 Thieves that's outside of NA.
Yeah. I think the big thing helping them is at least have Breeze in their pocket, right? Like they've shown the ability to play Breeze in the North American region. That certainly helps. They're still strong on Icebox and Ascent. I think the biggest thing for me is just like they've had a little bit of poor running form on Haven lately. Plus, you know, they're 50-50 on Bind and they don't really play a lot of Split. So that's like, there's a couple of shaky areas there, right? But I guess that's one thing you could say is that a lot of their Haven losses have been the Sentinels, and a lot of those games have been very close. So maybe their Haven isn't as weak as maybe the stats indicate. But I still think there are a couple of shaky areas you have to kind of keep an eye out for them.
Well, speaking of Breeze, let's talk about another NA team here. I think we should probably talk about Sentinels in their group as well. They like Breeze. They like a bit of Breeze. They're 4-1 on that map in recent times. So this group is, I mean, it's a round robin now. So that's just
unfortunate.
I mean, yeah. I think, but to be fair, the elimination of Brent, I think, makes this incredibly competitive, especially with F4Q. I don't know. I think they're definitely in a position to be at least a very competitive team. This group now doesn't really have any free wins. I would suggest at least. You know, I think I think our predictions for this group were a little varied. Yeah. Okay. I was just being a dickhead, but I mean, I'll be honest with y'all. I wanted to, you know, make it just to bet on something ridiculous, just in case I was actually right. I'd look like a god. But yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't here for this. Like, I'm glad this is in the past now. So we could
dude, everyone was fucking molding. Well, and that's fine. But now in this group, I feel like the stakes get higher because no one gets like a buffer game. There's no team to just, and I hate to say this, quote unquote, get fortunate by you know being able to take on Bren in that first game. Right now, it's a round robin. Everyone's sort of playing everyone. How do we feel like this is going to shake out? I don't really think there's been any monolithic occurrence within the last month or so that would give people cause to doubt Sentinels, right? They've
no way.
been as consistent as
That,
always.
I think G2's the weakest European team at the tournament, so I feel like if anything, Sentinels are going to definitely get out of this group no matter what. Like, yeah, you kind of wonder, like, does F4Q come out and, like, play, like, some type of dark horse spoiler with their, like, really wacky play style if it, like, catches people off guard, but typically gimmicks like that are only going to be good for, like, a map or so, and especially since people have now watched film on them and they kind of know to anticipate that type of stuff.
Right.
I think Sentinels are just too well-rounded, too good of a map pool, too strong of just individual players. With the flexibility that they have on those players as well. Shot calling's good. And again, in a game like this where you have to be really good at being a reactionary team because you never know what type of new stuff's going to be thrown at you in the heat of the moment, they have a bunch of players who are good decision makers to handle those types of situations on the fly. So, yeah, there's just no way that Sentinels don't make it out this group, and very likely they just come out first seed with very little trouble to do it.
Look, that's interesting. Do you guys agree with Dust in that G2 is the weakest European team here?
Mike's?
I think I would say so. I think I would rate.
I think
Gambit,
Acend and Gambit are
SMB
clearly
all
better
over
than
them.
G2, at least, right? I think we can agree to that.
I think that it's that I expect Supermassive Blaze and Gambit to be pretty high up there, but I think for the third place, it could still be anybody's game, honestly, between Acend and G2. Not gonna lie about that. Although it's probably a hot take for the community for me to put G2 at the same level as Acend, but I think they have what it takes for sure.
I have just found that I'm dog shit at evaluating G2 at any point. I find it so incredibly frustrating to try and pin them down and understand that roster, especially even more so now, right? With like, you could argue that like they've found this consistency now. They don't fuck about and just DM to quite the same degree with Calder and over on this team, right? And you would probably argue they shored up some of their weaknesses here, but like EMEA is really scary. Like, Supermassive Blaze has got like what Brave and Turco, this frightening,
Fora, Russ,
this really frightening roster. So
yeah,
I was
for sure.
Yeah, I was fishing. I wanted to see if like there was any reason for us to sort of think that G2 would sort of rise above their station here, but
the thing is, and Mike, I'll let you chime in at the same time too, but it's like not having Brennan playing this round robin right now, there is still potential for upsets, right? So I think there's still, at this point, I'd still put G2 over F4Q, but there's still opportunities of upsets because they're going to have to play each other twice, which means play style. We know how they play now. We know how they aim now. Maybe we got crushed. If it's the same maps, we know the tendencies, and we can maybe counter-strat it the night of or whatnot, right? Even when we look at this new schedule, because of everything that's been going around, if I'm not mistaken, there's still like potentially 1 or 2 day break before these teams face off against each other a second time. So there is a lot of time for prep. And I don't know what you think about this, Mike, but I think you're pretty vocal about the or you share an opinion that's like, if people have a chance to like study us for a couple of hours or a couple of days, it kind of takes away all a little bit of that time you put into practice.
Right. I think the main thing is like I think F4Q like G2 for that last slot is like almost 50-50, I think.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would give to F4Q is that like the Korean region always seems to have like tricks up their sleeves. So even like if they come out and win or lose that first series the second time around, I feel like they could come out with just a brand new comp or something. Because we scrimmed them yesterday, and it's just like they have so much just random stuff that you haven't thought of or like haven't seen before. And it's like I could definitely see that throwing off a team like G2 where you're playing a much more like structured region most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, like, I stand by what I said about G2 being the weakest European team, but that's still good enough to get you into top 8, I think, and get out of this group. And I also think, depending on the matchup, they could still place top 4 in the event. I just think that they have some troubles, right? I think that Mixwell hasn't been as impactful on the role swap. I think Kellogg's has sometimes struggled against fellow top European competition in that jet
Kellogg's he gets fucking trebucheted into the enemy team.
Yeah, and
he would like updraft double dash on fucking icebox offense through the middle of the map.
Yeah,
and just
and again, like the shot calling comes into question. Their map pool is also, I feel like, very much in question as well. They made some pretty drastic changes to the roster, obviously, back in, I think that was what, like late May, early June. So they've only been together for like 3, maybe 4 months at most. So they don't have that many maps under their belt, even in officials, as a 5, and even what they do have, you question, how good is their bind? How good is their haven? They've only played split once. Like, there's a lot of question marks out there for them, I feel like.
How deep their pool is.
Enough to make you kind of question them, but I think they're still probably going to be able to get out this group at least.
Do
But
you
they're
guys
not
give a shit that
Sentinels,
they're
there's no
based
way.
in Germany? Like, that they're based there? That, like, the travel nonsense is just not a factor
I don't
for
buy
them?
that.
That counts.
You're still out of like your home area. Like they're all from different countries, so it's like you're not just at home playing the game regardless.
I thought
like
they
you're
were
in a different
all.
facility.
Sorry, I thought they were all playing from Berlin as a team. At the moment.
They might have had a boot camp like for the
Okay.
qualifier, I think, but it's still the
Mhm.
same thing where it's like Mixwell's from Spain, so he's not at home with his family and stuff. Like it's definitely different environment, even if they're used to it.
Sure. I wasn't sure if there was like a team house scenario for them. I guess during COVID, that seems like a little less
It's
likely.
tough, yeah.
In that case. All right. So okay, so we have a bracket here. This is like I think this is based on how theoretically the seedings would play into. This could be awful, or it could be great. I think it's a little bit hard to understand how we got here. I think that's maybe the issue. It's maybe our producer Ian here, I think, on a theorized seeding system coming out of groups. So it's sort of like it's predicated on the teams that get out of groups would then get seeded based on their, I would argue, their initial seeding or something like that. I actually, it's based on the first seed if you get out of the group first. There you go. So yeah, highest seed gets out of the group first and then the second. So let's just pretend.
Let's just
fucking pretend. Yeah, let's just play around with this one here. So here's a potential bracket. Vision Strikers versus G2 seems like a reckoning for that G2 roster. That seems like really facing the music.
I would take Vision Strikers there all day.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would be random seeding in that regard, but this is like
they might just flip coins for it.
Yeah,
we're just having fun. We don't know if this is the bracket or not, but hey, if this matchup were to theoretically happen, I would take Vision Strikers all day long on it. That's just me personally.
So it's based on like first seeds playing second seeds getting out of groups, I think so.
Gotcha.
All right. So then what do you think about going up against a Gambit potentially here? I think they're a team that I think that has some similarities with Envy's approach, right? They always seemed like, at least definitely when they were so Astra heavy, right? Seemed to be pretty premeditated in their approach. How do you feel like going up against a team like them if that were the case?
I've been following Gambit since I was with G2, so that would be like 10 months now. And even back then, like in scrims, they were just like perfection. Every round, like every day, it's just like never feel like you have a chance in certain scenarios. And I'm just really interested because obviously they've gone over some part of that hump they had in matches where they were kind of like choking in the CIS region. And then obviously now they're like actually able to perform well in EU. It's just whether or not like the stage thing will affect them, I think, is the next step for them. Because I'm not sure like if you're going to be on stage at your first LAN, like how that's going to affect these guys. Like maybe they're over that mental hump completely and they're just going to do as well as they have been, or could be like a drop off. But I still find it weird like when I watch or like you have scrims against them versus when I watch them in matches, because it's not like I wouldn't say it's a nerves thing. It feels like they just call different, which I've seen with some teams before, which I find even more like intriguing when teams, it's not like they're missing shots, but the way they call is completely different.
Does it skew more aggressive or risky in terms of their calling? Like, does it feel like they're less well drilled when they're under match conditions?
It feels less risky. Like it's more like people tend to group up more and it might be a little bit faster, it might be slower, but people are kind of like herded up. It's not like it's not like there's that trust there. Yeah. But it's like it's a very weird, like I've seen it in NA too where teams do the same thing and I haven't quite figured it out.
All right. So I mean, let's for the sake of present company give Envy the win there in this match.
Okay.
Cheers.
As we're playing this bracket out.
That would be a spicy match though if it were to come up, man.
Yeah.
I would love watching that game.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Bracket is just going to be insane, man. And you look at the
let's say for the sake of the simulation that El Diablo just rips ass on them. We have Vivo Keyed and 100 Thieves here. I mean, that's a fucking impossible one to call, knowing how little we know about this one. For the purposes of expediency, let's give it to 100 Thieves and talk about Sentinels versus Acend here. I'm curious to hear from you guys how you think this styles clash between these two rosters, because you have, I feel like there are some parallels here, but I don't think anyone can really take the cake for an aggressive operator player, like Acend can boast.
CNET and Tens is going to be fun to watch.
Oh yeah, that's just a spicy matchup, isn't it?
That's just going to be really fun to watch.
They're just birds of the same feather, right? Like they're like versatile duelists who, I mean, obviously you would say like CNET's a little bit more jet heavy than Tens is, obviously, but obviously CNET's also shown the capability to play other duelists like Arena or something like that as well and be very impactful. And I feel like each team kind of allows that player the same level of freedom. Like Sentinels will certainly give Tens the freedom to be a playmaker in certain situations, and Ascent's kind of the same way. Like they're a pretty structured team generally, but there's definitely those rounds or those moments where they will just kind of cut CNET loose and like let him go for some type of individual play and just try to blow things up. And both of those guys can have an equal level of impact on the game whenever they are cut loose and they're just kind of feeling it and they're able to just kind of pop off and create havoc. So that's what makes this matchup so spicy, is like who has the most impact on the server between those two players. It is definitely like a key storyline if those two come against each other.
I even think their second duelist, right? When you're looking at Sick, or he plays a Sky, or he plays a Phoenix or a Raze or whatever, but
yeah,
he could also play that second duelist role. You also have I don't know what we're watching, but also on Ascend's side, Zeke has been playing some duelist roles as well, right? As a secondary duelist. So I feel that the playstyle for both of these teams are actually fairly similar, where it could also really match up like a nice little 50-50 for that matchup too.
Yeah, just want to encourage people to calm the fuck down in chat. I did say we call envy for the sake of present company and nothing more than that. Like we don't really.
All good, guys. All good.
You guys just take a breather there in the chat.
You can write Gambit in on your monitor or some Sharpie if you want.
You can click Gambit if you guys like. That's totally fine.
I mean, it's still gonna be Sentinels, Envy, 100 Thieves, and then Gambit can get fourth. I don't mind.
Yeah. I think like you guys have to understand in the chat that like none of us take any of you seriously when you write shit like DIS over NA in every shooter and there were 26-1 them. Like, do me a favor and shut the fuck up. Just save yourself some time. Sit down and fucking watch.
Go back to fucking school. Should you be in fucking class right now? Like, what is going on, man? School is in session. Get out of here.
That's true. That's true. It's not even like the real bracket. This is all assumptions of what's going to be coming out as well.
This is just a simulation. It is for the purposes of... I didn't call for that. This is for the purposes of a discussion. Okay, guys? So, deep breaths. All right, EU, okay, take a nice deep breath. I know that culturally maybe you're more geared to, showing aggression earlier in a conversation, but do us a favor and have some decorum. All right, Mike, great to have you with us, man. Your next few days are going to be busy. I guess you're going to be sticking to this grinder schedule.
Yeah, buying Ethereum or whatever at 4 in the morning, starting scrims or whatever the fuck. Yeah.
Buy the dip, bro. Get your Wojak memes ready, fam.
Shouldn't you start buying like NFTs and shit? Isn't that a big thing right now with all these pixel PFPs that I'm seeing on?
Yeah, maybe if I was a moron.
I mean, Vance, you look like a shitty NFT right now as well, mate.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Buy my stonks.
Oh shit! All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, Mike, and good luck, obviously, to Envy, of course, going forward, man. Thanks for coming on the show again.
Yeah,
thanks Mike.
For having me. You guys have a good one.
You too, man. Have a good sleep.
Now, let's talk about something that is of particular interest. I've noticed in my experience to people who hail from the CIS, maybe not in the most legal capacity, but that's fine. I want to introduce you to a new advertiser that we have on the show here. They go as Thrive Fantasy. Thanks for coming on board, Thrive Fantasy. We're going to talk a little bit about the platform here. You can go !Thrive in chat for some information about it, but it is a daily fantasy esports app for player props. So prop bets, right? It's not just like X team wins or Y team wins. The pitch here is that you can sort of knock out a lot of the hours of research that will be required, and you can sort of jump into the fun stuff, which is like, pick'ems or, wagering, essentially. Basically, each match has like a player prop, and we'll talk about what that is, and you can sort of choose an amount of them. You have like a certain amount of quota of points to go for, and basically everybody sort of, picks over and under on sort of certain stats or combinations of stats, and those who get the most right end up winning it. So it's not just like X team beats Y team. It's not necessarily just like a bracket pick'em.
Yeah.
It's a little I guess it's a little more accessible than that, especially if if you're not lost in the source. But most of our viewers are completely lost in the source. So
you can get more granular too, right? And in that sense, by having these props once we explain what it is. So I think it's still pretty cool to see that from a match perspective. To like not only because it's not only about results, I guess at this point, if you're looking at one team like A versus B team, A wins, but it's also what's happening inside. B team could still lose, but whatever you chose in your props could still give you some winnings. So that's pretty nice.
And yeah, if you get the more of those props you get correct, the more share of prize pool you get. This is only for US and Canada, as far as I understand. So that is something to be sort of aware of. But you wondering what a prop bet is? We showed that video, right? So there are bets on there for Masters Berlin. We can show you this one specifically because I think this is a little interesting. And ironically enough, some of these almost frame some of the discussions that we have. So essentially, some of them there is an entry fee. Some aren't. You can free roll as well, which means that you can just sort of enter the contest. It's a lot more people are able to enter, right? And then you can sort of, still experience it in the same fashion. We do have a promo code as well, Valoranting, so you can get on in
also
there.
Also, go ahead and race to Reddit right now, folks, with your leaks about CS:GO 2. Be sure to farm the karma right away. Go ahead and farm the karma. Get your threads out.
Val 3 confirmed.
Anyway,
Val 3 confirmed.
Daniel, can you click on the free roll as well, so we can show some of these props, so we can maybe sort of explain a little bit more. Basically, so here's a good example. So one of these props are, the player Mind Freak against Vision Strikers. The prop is, does he get, over the course of the series, the best of 3, does he get 29.5, does he get more or less than 29.5 total kills, right? Or Forsaken, for a whole series against Vision Strikers, more or less than 40 deaths, right? Now, in a best of 3, you assume it goes to sort of 2 maps, and you can sort of go from there. So you would... So obviously, it's the odds are represented in how much points it sort of quote unquote costs you. I think you have a quota of points that you can spend. You pick 5 out of 10 of the 10 options. So the less likely something is to happen, the more points you get right, and then it just takes the tally of points, and then you get paid out based on where you place, right? So the free roll is you can jump in there and give it a crack if you fancy that. Obviously, it uses Mixwell, for example, kills plus deaths, 60.5, over or under, that kind of thing. So that's a prop bet. It differs a little bit to just sort of trying to pick the winner of a series. It lets you sort of think more about players and how their performances might go. So give that a try if you fancy it. You can download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store or Play Store by visiting their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. And big shout out to them, obviously, for coming on board as an advertiser here, because obviously the show... they have to pay me to come do this. They ain't that cheap, you know what I mean? They have to pay fans. They have to pay Dust.
Yep,
I
think.
do. So, yeah. We'll sorry, Jason. Sorry. But there you have it. So we also we have a referral code, guys, as well. Like I said, you can, if you are interested, you can use that. You receive 100% instant first deposit match up to $100, right? So they match your deposit. And again, we have a disclaimer. Can we? So I think yes, you can scroll down, and there's an extension for Thrive Fantasy here. I think here on the page, if you want to sign up instantly, it's
on the Twitch page here if you're watching.
So yeah, it's pretty well integrated.
And just to let you guys know too, if you're actually looking at the site right now too, this actually has all the matches from day 1. So I think you have to check onto the site more regularly, so you can check into day 2 and stuff like that too later on to see the other contests or the other bets that you could put out at the same time too. This one I call it the contest because it's a $0 entry fee. So keep an eye on that, because you could still make some easy or free money on your end if you know the scene quite well, and if you know the players quite well. Then this should be easy peasies. And mind you, it's 5 out of the 10 options. So I think, if not mistaken, if you're looking at different, so not only in esports, they have it for a bunch of sports anyways. But let's focus on Valorant here. I think depending on what you're betting, could also have different types. Like you could also have one that's 10 options, which will probably give you a bigger payout too. And where you've actually picked from the bottom left of your screen, if you're seeing right now in this overlay, position field 0 out of 5. So you get to choose.
Yeah. So for example, let's do this shit. So for example, all right, I take the under on Mind Freak getting 29.5 total kills in that series. For some reason that's worth sort of more points. Yeah. So Forsaken probably is going to have over 40.5. deaths plus kills, I think, for the course of that series, right? Oh, no, it's
That's
just
just
deaths.
deaths.
Yeah, versus Vision Strikers on a BO3.
Yeah, it'd probably only be 2 maps, right?
That's just deaths, by the way.
Yeah. So then I would say under if he's under.
Yeah, I'll go under.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we do under instead. That's fine. What else have we got here? Scroll down a bit more. The Gambit one is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about this one?
And
over sheesh. So Shados versus Crazy Raccoon.
Yeah.
He's not
in a
going to
best of
last long
3.
enough for him to get that many kills in Death
Yeah,
Combine, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly right.
And-
So I would say under.
And that's the thing too, chat. If you're looking at every single one of these props, then you could see that it's overall 200 points, right? So depending on the odds, you could win 120 points or 80 or 80 points or 100 points, depending which is going to be like a harder take for you to take. So you also have to be mindful as there's not only like 5 options and you just choose between. There's like a full list, and you want to try to figure out the maximum amount of points that you could get, knowing the community, knowing the scene, and knowing the players, right? Because you could get all of them right and still not have enough points to get first place. So be mindful of that as well when you're going through the profiles.
Absolutely. So obviously, yeah, that's right. The spicier you get, the higher your potential maximum points are, and if obviously your spice ends up being correct, then and then you would select 2 more, and then you'd be off to the races. That's it. Submit in the free roll. Don't have to spend any cash roll of it. Obviously, you can for higher potential winnings. Yeah, we just hit that submit button and away we go. We do we do want to make some disclaimers here for you guys as well, because this is I think look, in all honesty, this is something that we're starting to see a little bit more of now in esports. I think a lot of us are also sort of growing up a little bit in that, and people like to throw a bit of a wager on games in general here. So we obviously have the National Problem Gambling Helpline there as well. And the National Council on Problem Gambling operates on National Problem Gambling Helpline Network. Help is available 24/7, is 100% confidential. So encourage you to use those resources if you might feel like those are necessary. But again, thanks to Thrive Fantasy for coming on board and helping support the show, because like I said, you don't get this kind of thing put together for free. So shout out to them. Thank you. We'll be back after a break, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the Chinese scene. I think it's quite fascinating. And then we'll wrap up as well on some news that we're hearing coming out of ESIC. So stick around. More Valoranting up on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been a fair bit of buzz, good and bad, I think, coming out of China in terms of gaming and esports and Valorant, because we sort of, got the impression that they were looking to try and launch the game out in that region. We know just how huge a market it is, but it's not so simple, especially with recent regulations sort of, taking hold over there and the impact that could sort of have on the industry wider. So we want to dive a little bit deeper into that. In order to do so, we're going to bring someone who's actually worked out in China, for League of Legends, and now still works on the LPL remotely from the UK. Let's bring on to the show Joe Munchables Fenny, a mate of mine from quite a few years back, mate. Hey, looking great, buddy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to chat again, mate, because it's been a long old while since we did an event together. Like CSL.
Yeah, like fucking Gamescom, going way back. I do remember. Now, obviously, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, Munchables. You've obviously been a caster for quite some time now, over a couple of different products here. But what are you up to now, mostly?
So I'm one of the LPL play-by-play casters. So for anyone that doesn't know League of Legends at all, LPL is the Chinese professional league for League of Legends. Obviously, I'm on the English stream, so we're kind of technically the B stream for the LPL. The main stream over in China gets like, I don't know, a bajillion viewers a day. And then we do the English translation stream for that. So 2020, I was over in China doing the commentary there. Then obviously 2021 with COVID and everything, we've been doing it remotely. So I've currently based in the UK. I'm actually in Ireland right now. We literally just did our finals and we did it from a studio in Ireland. So we've been zipping about a bit, but yeah. So I'm one of the main LPL guys basically.
Now, you'd have to have a feeling for this, right? Obviously, you're doing the English stream, and obviously sometimes like the English stream for like a non-localized region is not usually as huge, right? But there's been a really growing interest, I think, from the West in what's going on in Chinese League of Legends with their recent rise to just being the dominant region in the world. How big is League in China compared to like League in Europe, for example? Like, can you sort of give us a feel for just how the scale of the following and fandom in China?
Yeah, so I mean, just in terms of sheer numbers, it's like not really comparable. But the weird, so I think everyone kind of thinks about this wrong in a lot of situations where like on one side the numbers are so much bigger in China, and you always hear about like faked numbers and things like this, but it becomes a lot more believable when you go to China and you kind of visualize quite how many people are in this country, because like League of Legends is not like it's not like absolutely everyone in the country knows League of Legends. It's just that there are so many people in this country that you can believe, like, if just 0.5% of this population plays League of Legends, it's going to be the most successful game of all time. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's just on a whole different scale over there. So yeah, but you see like promotions all the time on like cans of pop and like the promotions at McDonald's on the Happy Meals or whatever, and this kind of thing. Like it's much more normal to
seems like
I
it
guess
penetrates
to love League
like
of Legends. Yeah.
general culture and lifestyle to like a greater degree than in the West, right?
I think it's just more accepted as like
Okay.
a normal thing to do.
I was gonna ask that too, because it was, I've been to Korea back in the day for like Counter-Strike events, and StarCraft Brood War was still huge out there, and it became like a culture where even like the pro players were like doing ads and stuff like that too in the South Korean scene. So I was just wondering if it's like the same type of like reception at that scale that we see for South Korea, or is it just like the advertisement as you mentioned before here, Munchable?
Definitely, for the pro players, it's unbelievable. Like,
okay,
a good example is, I think it was either 2020 or 2021. Uzi, who, if you don't know Uzi, basically one of the most legendary League of Legends players ever, super 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 famous in China. He was voted as the like #1 celebrity or #1 influencer or something in China across all media, not just in video games. He had stopped playing like a year prior to this. He wasn't even an active pro, and he gets voted as like the most influential, most famous person. So I think that gives like credence to how huge it is over there. And like you will see occasional posts on Weibo, and it'll all get posted on Twitter and stuff of like, for example, Jackie Love is a really famous player. He was on the 2018 IG roster that won the World Championship, and he's on this team called Top Esports. And you just see a post from like some fashion magazine like Vogue or whatever, and it's got the front cover is Jackie Love with some posh. Yeah, I'm not a fashion guy, all right, but
neither.
And we've seen this like multiple times across the course this year. Not just one team either. Like loads of them have done like fashion shoots, and like they're just in popular culture. The really famous players. So it's really crazy to see like the insane scale, and also the variance, because you got the top players who are in all of these magazines and get paid insane money, and then on the opposite side of the scale as well, you got the players that are just coming into the scene. It's like it's as if these players are living in a different world.
Now, what I want to know, like, obviously there are a lot of key differences to how games are sort of accepted and how they are run in China. A lot of the time they just sort of do it themselves, right? So, good example here is that, I mean, on the Blizzard side, I know that like no Blizzard people really run the Chinese sort of broadcast. They sort of tend to do it themselves. And I know this, having casted Chinese League of Legends as well. I did a couple Stars War League events back when like Zitai was playing mid for IG, for example. Now, even the splash arts for certain champions were different than the ones in the West. They were altered. For example, Karthus, who is a lich, he's a skeletal undead. They covered his entire face because they can't really show bones or remains in their games. That was just something that they, I guess, kind of censored out of it. So, but more broadly, now working, pretty closely with sort of a Chinese product. How hard is it to sort of get a game in the West out in China, do you think? What kind of regulation is there that sort of makes this more challenging, and obviously with more government involvement, and also it's more cultural awareness about games in China? I don't know if you can shed any light on that. And we ask that because obviously, it's been a while since Valorant's been out, and it's still not been a thing in China yet.
So I mean, obviously, I'll start off by saying, I'm a commentator, so I don't necessarily. I've not tried to launch a game in China.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just add that. But the way that I've seen it work basically is if it's a Western developer, the best way forward is to approach a Chinese publisher essentially, and you kind of essentially sell at least part of your game to that publisher, so they'll be in charge of your game. So, for example, League of Legends, right? It's run by a company called TJ Sports, which is obviously owned by Tencent.
Right.
The T in TJ stands for Tencent. And so Tencent owns League of Legends in China, and Riot is still like, it's almost treated like it's a separate product from League of Legends. It's not quite, but it's like complete, like the way that the Chinese client works is slightly different. Like there are battle passes and things that don't happen in the West, and there's products and things that happen in the West that don't happen in China. Like it is essentially to a lesser extent a separate product, even though the final, like the actual in-game stuff is almost all the same. But like the experience outside of the game is different, and the way that things are branded and the way that things are promoted is totally different. So the only way I've seen it work in China is when a Western developer partners with a Chinese publisher and essentially says, hey, here's a really successful game, we would like to sell it in China, you can sell this in China for us, basically, and just kind of goes completely hands off.
Same thing happened with CSGO with Perfect World. For those of you out there who are like not in League but no tactical FPS, same thing basically happened with the company called Perfect World in China publishing CSGO.
Right. So then in that case too, there's also been some news that came out maybe like last week. It's like fresh, saying how, you know, we're kind of like limiting the amount of hours now that underage, I guess under 18 players could actually play. I think it's limited to like an hour over the weekend, right? Which I'm now thinking it's like an hour a week of gaming that they're allowed to have until they're like 18. So
I think it's 3 hours a week, but yeah, it's still really limited.
How does
no
that
grass to fucking touch out there either?
Yeah.
So what are they supposed to do?
So this not only shakes up like the potential of what Valorant brings, but I guess also what it brings into League of Legends here, Munchables. Do you think that this is gonna change the scene a little bit in terms of like the Chinese competition? What's the take on that?
The immediate thought is clearly negative, right? Like if the up and coming talent can't play regularly, that's going to be an issue. So bit of bonus context to this. This did already exist in China to a lesser extent. I think it was like 10 hours a week or something was the rule. Or I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that there was a
limited
underage gamer rule already in place.
Right.
And the way around that is basically you just attach your account to your parents' name instead of your name. So then you can still just play, right? And most of the parents of these kids don't have a League of Legends account, right? So the big thing that I think it will change, and this is entirely my own speculation, right? But the big thing I think it will change is just like entry point for the LPL. So there's a player called Cream who was a rookie this year and like had this amazing breakout split for himself. Really kind of made some waves. But I don't know if he's going to be able to play this year because I think he might be too young. So I think he might have to step away for a split and then rejoin again. I'm not especially sure about what the rules are around that because it's all kind of still to be publicly discussed. But I think that's going to be what changes. And also then in the LDL, which is like the development league for the LPL, like the one underneath, I think there's going to be quite a lot of players that affects because obviously that's usually a younger player base than the actual LPL itself. So I think in the like talent development scene, I think everything is kind of going to be pushed back a year or two. But in terms of like your average gamer, I don't think it'll actually make that much difference. I could be totally wrong on that. I could be just misunderstanding the situation, but I don't think it should like completely change the way it's looked at.
Because you're also saying that they're using like their parents' ID or something like that too. So assuming right now what happens in League of Legends or any other game right now is that you actually have to tie in like your government identification to your gaming account, which then probably would be the same thing for Valorant once it gets announced too, that you have to attach your government ID.
Well.
Yeah. To your
social security number is associated, I think, with your League of Legends game account. So
it's all done through this like messenger app. Basically, it's not. Everyone would think WeChat, right? It's this one called QQ, which is a little bit more archaic than WeChat, and it's an absolute nightmare to use. I'm going to be totally honest. Maybe the worst app I've ever opened. But basically, you have to verify your identity through that app, and then you just log into your league account through that login, basically.
Okay. Yeah. That QQ and WeChat, it's very integrated. Like a lot of your perhaps that's also how this sort of social credit system is mandated. Here's a question for you. Like, did you have this is maybe a little off topic, but I'm curious. How closely did you sort of brush up against sort of the purported higher degree of surveillance that, citizens experience in China? Did you, as a Westerner, feel, were you aware of any sort of remotely Orwellian conditions, or like, do you feel like, like with, obviously like you weren't a citizen, right? So it's probably a little bit different, but you were there for a decent amount of time, right? Did you?
So,
Yeah.
not overtly,
Okay.
not like not seeing people get black bagged on the street kind of thing. You know?
Just fucking
like
gatting
it's
in the
still
quad,
it's still a normal city, right? But there is a lot of cameras. Like they have facial recognition cameras everywhere, which are kind of like it sort of head height.
Oh.
And like one of the weirdest ones, which is kind of just strange, honestly, to me, is there are certain like crossings in the middle of the city center that are like the roads there. It's kind of like LA or whatever, where it's like 8 lanes, and whatever. It's like a motorway right through the middle of the city. So the crossings are like these huge. It's like a 200-meter sprint to get across the road. They have like these weird LED wall kind of camera things where if you like jaywalk it, if you go across while the light's red, it will take a photo of you. And not only is there a fine attached to that, but they broadcast on these screens that this is a person that jaywalked this week. This is a person that jaywalked this week. This is a person that jaywalked this week. It's
I remember that.
Like this kind of public humiliation aspect to it. It's bizarre to me.
That's mental.
Yeah, it almost feels like Black Mirror. I heard something about that in terms of like there's so many like cameras all around the place, which is why like there's pros and cons too of like how you're how much you're being monitored, for example, because you could kind of be pretty much safe walking around the streets at 2 a.m. and whatnot because there's cameras watching you all over the place. But there's also like a rating system as well because of these cameras. So like, for example, if you haven't been an outstanding citizen and you're always jaywalking, then your social score kind of like goes down, which therefore means that if you want to buy like a monthly bus pass, it could cost you more than like an astounding citizen. It's pretty strange in that sense.
We're obviously drifting a little bit from topic.
Sorry,
this is actually something that this isn't just China. The Australian government is considering mandating like facial camera recognition to prove that you're quarantining. Yeah. And this is in the news recently this week. In Australia, it's like you have to stay at home. They're going to send an update to your phone where you need to take a photo of yourself. If you don't respond to it in 15 minutes, copper's on your doorstep. I shit you not. Yeah. So look, guys, let's just be clear here. It's not just the East that can be authoritarian. Australia is the most authoritarian country in the West as well. Pretty insane how they're handling the currency. Anyway, look, I
always find it funny that we all consider Australia the West. But it's like very clearly also East.
Yeah,
like,
I know. Yeah, I mean,
but it's like a Western country, right?
It's because so much entertainment from the UK and the US gets imported there that it like essentially, we
philosophically Western country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But what I will say, the reason why I want to talk about this is that because there was recently, Fiat on Fire sort of tweeted about Valorant expanding into China, and that there were so here's the website, right? So obviously, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's Mandarin, guys. Yeah, not an expert, but looks a little bit like that, It looks like little houses and shit. So this is a landing page theoretically, and the website is like val.qq. I don't know. It's something like that. Like it could be a hoax, but it looks like a website that is implying. Now I don't know how your Mandarin's gotten. Joe, but it looks like it's implying a launch.
I can get WeChat Translate out if that's.
But there's the NPPA. Don't know who that is. It's an approval or a license. So the official launch still has to wait, even though there's like a website up. So there is an association in China, I suppose. Now, what the NPPA? I don't know what that is.
The National Press and Publication Administration. So it's
Right.
it's the regulator that approves video game titles.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, I think a lot of countries have that in terms of like rating, like the appropriateness for like age groups and stuff like that. It's just like an MA 15 plus. I don't know what you guys have in America. Like you guys have different ratings. But yeah, So yeah, like PEGI 18 kind of thing. So that might be it. But I know that, you know, obviously certain elements of like microtransactions are like heavily scrutinized, and like you have to ESRB. It's like you have to publish the drop rates for like games that have loot boxes and shit like that in for example. I imagine in Valorant it's not much of an issue because that's just not there. People just fucking spank hundreds of bucks to get what they want. Yeah. It is such a boomer trap, man. Once we get these disposable incomes, we just fucking
price of gun skins in Valorant blows my. It's like a total casual.
Great?
Like I've never spent it like.
I'm buying the Z set.
I'm a fucking casual, and I spank into that game just for the fucking skins. I don't know what's wrong with me, man.
I barely spend money on League of Legends.
Jeez,
that's the game I play all day, every day.
I think I spent 1,700 so far here, so on Valorant skins.
Yeah, y'all think Valorant skin prices are bad? Go look at the third-party market for CS:GO skins, bro. That crap gets wild.
Yeah. I cracked open like
nothing yet.
I cracked open like a StatTrack Manowar or whatever. Like $450 for it in the Steam store, man. I'm like,
people are spending thousands of dollars on knives and stuff in that game, bro.
I mean, $6
grand. I have like $1,000 of knives on my CS account, I reckon.
I made $6 grand on 4 stickers with CS:GO last year.
Yeah, I did. I had a Hollow Titan sticker from Katowice, I think.
Bro, that shit's like 16,000.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it was the really expensive one. I think it was like one of the moderately expensive ones, but not the Titan sticker.
Anyway, I have it, and I put it on a fucking gun, so it's worth 300 now. I'm so mad.
You guys think that? Now, Joe might have less insight into this, which is totally fine. But FPX are a really big org in China. Really fucking big org in China. Really want to own League of Legends. Do you guys think that they're going to take a Chinese team? I feel like they. Well, I think they will.
Can I ask a bigger question? Actually, that kind of piggybacks off of this, if you don't mind. Is how big can attack FPS get in China? Period. Because I'll be honest with you, it didn't seem like CS:GO ever really got that huge in the Chinese market as far as like total player count goes. I knew it grew substantially between like 2019 and 2020. I think when it first launched in like 2019, there's only like maybe 35,000 peak concurrent players in China, and then it kind of dropped up to like 6 figures, and it seemed like it was actually kind of growing in the region. But it just seems like it never really took root. We never really had any like super big Chinese teams in CS:GO that would like really contend internationally. They would maybe cause some upsets here and here in big tournaments, and there was always qualifiers for that region, but they were never like super huge. Like maybe just a couple individual players that got some notoriety. And most of the big name players in China weren't even from China. You had someone like Ben Tet, who's from a different Asian country, who came and played on a Chinese team in Tyloo, and he was like their star player.
From
right?
Mongolia or something like that?
Yeah, Mongolian player. Yep.
I think he's from Indonesia, actually, but yeah, there were Mongolian teams and stuff as well. So, there's a lot of that going on. So I guess my point is like, how big can it get, and are there other tactical shooters they're going to have to compete with, right? Because I know, like, for example, the issue with Korea was always sudden attack, you know, being like a competitor to CS:GO directly, basically. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what the market is like in China. Like, is there room for attack FPS? And if so, how popular can it really be in comparison to a League or an Overwatch or something like that?
So I would definitely say that, like, one of the big factors in this is going to be A, like infrastructure behind it, and B, the publisher that they partner with. So obviously, Riot and Tencent. I mean, Riot is literally owned by Tencent, right? So they will have like massive support from Tencent right from the word go. They will have massive marketing, and they'll put a huge amount of money into promotion straight off of the bat. And obviously, it'll be a big hyped up event. They'll probably this is just pulled out of my arse here, but like, you know, League of Legends Worlds is coming up. If there's rumors that Valorant's going to be announced in China, I'm just saying we could put 2 and 2 together there. Maybe that's a part of the big event, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, like, when you think about the sheer amount of marketing Riot can do versus some of these other companies in the past, but then on top of that, when you think about Valorant as a game versus Counter-Strike, like, Counter-Strike is an old school game that has been like occasionally built up, and now CS:GO, I mean, that came out quite a long time ago at this point. This game was not designed to be marketed, right? It was designed as a game. Yeah. Valorant was designed in the modern age of gaming, where marketing is in the very beginning of the thoughts of how you're going to publish this.
We all work
right?
in marketing.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you think about it like that, like, there is so much more that you can market with Valorant. Like, You've got, these cool characters in the game. You've got all of these different styles of characters within the game, all of these different gun skins and all of this kind of stuff, right? Which CSGO doesn't really compete with in any significant way, not to the same level, So I think
it's niche, yeah, definitely.
there's more to be attracted to in Valorant for your random casual gamer. And obviously there's the competitive side of things. And I think anything in China that's particularly competitive will always have its niche because it's an incredibly, dude, I love Chinese solo queue. That's a different story, but it's so much fun. But like, just from the perspective of marketing alone and the fact that they'll be going in with 10% from the word go, I think inevitably it's going to be more successful than CSGO was.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see it because I'll be honest with you, I can tell you right now that a huge part of what is propping up the Overwatch League is their Chinese involvement. It is fucking mental. While the rest of the esports scene and the industry itself in the West just disregards and generally ignores the Overwatch League, or maybe has some snide remarks here and there, China really goes hard for it, and they really love the game. And I think that's probably a huge reason why we're still in like a pretty decent place. And we'll be around for a little while, much to the dismay of many. So I know it's a huge market, and obviously the issue is you can never really trust the numbers to a degree, like on these streaming platforms. But there's more than just numbers that sort of indicates their involvement. Joe, thanks for coming on the show, man. What is coming up for you? Obviously, you're in the UK right now, mate, and obviously, yeah, it's all fun and games over there from what I've been following in the news. So what is next?
So for me, it's going to be streaming during the off season. We've got Worlds coming up, which is exciting. So watching all of that good stuff and doing content around that, nice. and then kind of waiting for the off season to finish so I can talk about League of Legends again. So you kind of asked at the worst possible moment what's coming up because I'm going into my holiday period.
Hey, let's cut some Brawl Stars or some shit sometime, homie. I've seen you out there on that shit. All right. Thanks for joining us, man. Have a good one.
Yeah,
and good luck, obviously, with the rest of your calendar.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, so yeah, China, obviously, a lot of potential in that region. Some hurdles to clear, evidently. But I was quite curious, guys, to hear from Joe that, maybe this sort of ban on sort of underage gaming, this illicit gaming, is actually not that impactful, and it's really just a extension of one they had already. I think he was drinking a Heineken, mate. What I could see.
Yep.
But yeah, so what do you guys? I mean, I won't ask you too much more about it, but I think it's promising for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think he was right and kind of nailed it where it probably won't affect like the casual player base, right? So I think like the main gist of like the teens trying to get onto the games and starting to play some ranked, some unrated will actually prep them up so that as soon as they're 18, they could actually already start competing, right, at the pro level. So I think there was always ways around them when he, from what I gathered, that Joe explained. So I don't think it should be that much of an issue, although going from 10 hours to 1 or 3, whatever it is, could make a slight difference there.
Let's crack on here and touch on some subject matter that Dust is probably a little bit more in tune with, actually, than either of us right now, because you still maintain a pretty strong presence in Counter-Strike and still operate in that space a lot. So at least it's
not quite. I still keep up with it, like, just, because it's near and dear to me. But you don't see my face a lot in that game. Let's put it that way. But I definitely keep. I keep tabs. I keep my finger on.
Still watching VODs. He's still watching VODs.
Yeah, I still have the binders full of notes and all that. So.
There you go.
All right, so let's talk about the updates and from the ESIC investigation, because obviously pretty huge one. So this is the current matters that are being handled by ESIC, right? Obviously the spectator bug is interesting. The match fixing investigation in ESEA Premier specifically. The heroic situation with the coaching bug and this Hunden situation, who, I mean, now this is so Hunden's situation is really interesting because so much stuff came out even after the initial ruling was sort of handed down. But let's talk about first, I guess, about this NA cheating situation in ESEA Premier. This is obviously not great. This region's been touched on by match fixing before. And it looks like in Australia and North America, there's been alleged breaches of the anti-corruption code inside ESEA Premier.
Yep.
Is this just happening because it's like, let's be honest with each other. Is this happening because there's just not a lot of money in it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, and here's the thing: like, if you're an ESEA Premier player in North America, and you probably at this point really have no hopes, or and obviously these investigations go back like a long time, like even a couple of years ago. And essentially what it boils down to is this: is like prior to what we're dealing with now with ESIC, if you got caught match fixing, the biggest punishment that you face was that, okay, you get barred from competing in Valve majors, which is basically what happened to the iBuyPower crew. I mean, if you're a premier player and you're not particularly very good and probably don't have a big chance of jumping up to a top level pro team, then what repercussions do you really suffer at that point? Like, oh, I can't go to Valve majors? Big fucking whoop. Like, I don't care. And the bottom line also is that there wasn't a lot of money to be made salary-wise at the premier level. Like, obviously, North America is known for big money when it comes to their pro teams, but when it comes to premier, it's not like you were making a substantial salary or anything like that. So the amount of money that you could make fixing, I mean, astronomical in comparison to what type of salary you would get. So anytime that your pay for doing the right thing is lower than the incentive of match fixing, and there's really no punishments in place for it that are that severe in the grand scheme of things for you as a semi-pro player, I mean, it's just a recipe for you to see it happen time and time again, especially whenever you're playing in league systems where at a certain point matches don't even matter anymore, right? In ESEA Premier, you know, you were basically playing this, I don't know if you call it round robin, but it's a league system, right? There's like 20-something teams in the league or whatever. You're going to play 20-something regular season matches. And at a certain point, matches don't matter anymore because you're either in playoffs or you're out. And so when you were in these tournament formats and you're a semi-pro player, you're not making much money, you're getting offered a bunch of money to fix matches, nothing's necessarily even in the line in some of these matches. Yeah, I mean, this was happening all the time. You know, I think even the guy from ESIC, which we'll hear from, I think a clip later, you know, talked about just how widespread it really was as far as the amount of players and teams that were involved. So yeah, it was big.
Yeah. Because I feel like even at that level too now, if you're looking at NACS, like if you're going through the playoffs and whatnot, it's not like a step up to go to anything else, to go to like a pro scene anymore too, right? So it's just like rinse, repeat, another season. So if you've already made it through the playoffs and you already have like, let's say you have 4 matches left to play in the season before you reach into playoffs, but you already secured a berth into the playoffs, you could have opportunities to make an extra few bucks, right? In terms of the last 4 matches to play. So there's definitely some intent in there. Should I say some incentives that allows for you to just double dip into just a salary and more cash flow.
Do you guys think this is because the Counter-Strike scene doesn't really have like a good open circuit? Do you think that problems like this appear because a hard ceiling gets put on these players in like tier 2 without like with limited opportunities to sort of progress their team outside of that substratum of competition?
I mean, can you have the same thing in terms of like the franchising model or league models too? Like for example, like let's say there's franchising already in a certain game, and then there's still like a tier 2 scene or an open scene that wants to have some sort of growth in there too. I'm sure that there's going to be those players that cannot make it into the franchise right now, into the franchise league, but that are aspiring to be pros, still want to find a way to still not have to flip burgers and aspiring to be a pro, right? So where do you find the extra income? And that's where, like in the lower scene, you might be able to see it.
So
it's also the fact that oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, like, it started out where you couldn't even bet except for on top-level pro matches. But as the demand increased for betting, then all of a sudden the supply had to increase. And so companies were more and more willing to start throwing in these semi-pro and more amateur league matches into the betting pool. And so when you do that, again, you get to a point where the stakes aren't very high for the competition itself, yet the match fixing incentive is massive. And so I think that was like a big issue as well, which is the expansion of betting into these more amateurish tournaments.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's something that, you know, I'm sure a lot of other sort of competitions have encountered, but it's just because we're so digitalized here as well. It seems like it's so easy to circumvent. And can I be honest with you as well? You know, in the future, when betting and gambling can potentially be orchestrated on the blockchain, it will be very hard to catch people out for this or for this behavior. It is, you can't, like, obviously the blockchain is used in a certain manner, I think, where it's a little bit hard to sort of trace people to some degree. So
well, even now in these situations, we're basically relying upon leaked conversations and stuff like that. It's not like we're tracking down these people when it comes to that type of stuff. Like you said, a lot of it is probably based on crypto. So a lot of the reason why we even have these investigations is, again, because somebody heard the wrong conversation, recorded it, someone took a screenshot of a text conversation. I mean, hell, in the case of Richard Lewis, Power, he had to get mailed an ex-girlfriend's phone of Derek Bourne, one of the guys that was involved in it. The ex-girlfriend basically mailed him physically the physical phone that had the text messages with him. And that's the only way that this thing really got broken wide open. So, yeah it's actually quite hard to get the evidence, actually.
I could have some shitty Bitcoin wallet, right? Like some less known one. I don't know, fucking Jax or Kraken. Someone could just send cryptocurrency to my wallet, and I could just transfer that into my Coinbase account. And then I'll just cash it out. You know what I mean? Like it's also like, and great example is like a lot of NFTs right now. Everyone's talking about NFTs. You can money launder with NFTs like so easily. Yep. It's insane. And the same is done with fine art in real life, by the way. So it's not like this is anything new, but I worry about the collision of those two worlds. But let's move on here, because Hunden is one of the most prominent figures in this whole web of fuckery. Because
what a piece of shit.
Yeah, this guy's just insane. So first of all, there's a whole story to this, but basically, Hunden was the one that reported the coaching bug, but he was also caught using it, right? It's like he reported it a little bit later on, and his quote unquote sentence, his ban got reduced because he reported this coaching bug. But it gets worse because more information tends to come out about this guy, about shit that he's been doing. So on September the 4th, Mr. Peterson sent ESIC information, which he alleges provides evidence that players who were playing for Heroic at the time were aware of the spectator bug. So now it's like, I'm not going to take the fall for the team. They're going to come down with me. And this is obviously in contrast with previous statements he's made, saying that, like when he tried to take a hit for the team. So it's like he's just turning around and he's just now snitching on his team now.
Yeah, let me add some context to this as well. The reason why this is happening is because he served his time for the spectator coach ban, right? He served his time. Heroic kept him employed. That he was still on the payroll. I think he got moved to like an analyst position or something like that, and just wasn't allowed to be a coach with the team, couldn't actually be in the server, couldn't travel with them to events, couldn't be on stage. You know, he was restricted, but he was still on the payroll. Like, he was still a part of the organization. And by the way, that was quite controversial. There's a lot of people in the community who thought that this was wrong, that like he didn't get punished at all because he basically still got to keep his job in a way, and he just couldn't do it in official capacity due to the ESIC ruling with partner tournaments that work with ESIC, right? So anyway, he served his time, he comes back. Now what happens is that there's discussions that the greatest coach of all time in CSGO, Zonic, for Astralis, was on his way out the organization, either to retire or to go move to a different team or just do a different job, whatever the case would be. He was out of Astralis. And so there's not many other Danish coaches out there that you could pick up if you want to stay Danish, which Astralis is very much Danish in CSGO space, at least. Yeah. And so the rumors were, at least, that you know they were in talks with Hunden to get him from Heroic to go over to Astralis. And what happened in the midst of all this is that supposedly, or not supposedly, now it's been found to be true, that Hunden leaked anti-strat material to an opponent of Heroic. Now, we don't know for sure that was Astralis, but probably was Astralis. This seems like that's probably likely. And anyway, so he said that he leaked anti-strat material. But it's also important to note that further evidence from the ESIC investigation found that it was more than just anti-strat material. Now, they didn't specify what it was, because apparently there's still ongoing litigation between the Heroic organization and Hunden, and so some information can't really come out just yet about the specifics of all that. But yeah, and so because of this conflict that's happening, that's when Hunden decides to drop dime on all the Heroic players knowing about it, even though prior to this, apparently he, indicated that they didn't know anything about it. So basically everyone's a fucking scumbag in this situation, and man, it's a nasty one.
So yeah, I mean,
I was just going to say, because of this story that's coming out with Hunden right now with the ESIC that's going to open like this brand new investigation, I think that's even going to slow down on what we're currently trying to figure out what's going on with ESIC and the whole match fixing kind of stuff, and these alleged players that are on this list that have made the switch out of Valorant, out of CSGO into Valorant, how that's going to affect them, right? Because we were waiting for news for like a year and a half, almost feels like 5 years at this point, but it seems as though it's not going to be anytime soon that we're going to get this information, especially with what's going on with Hunden now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we obviously this is relevant to Valorant in a sense. This backstory is required though, because obviously ESIC is working across both the Counter-Strike and the Valorant ecosystem. And there's a clip here as well from the HLTV show. So I'm not really sure what it's called now, but HLTV confirmed, where they interview a gentleman who we've sort of talked around before from ESIC. So have a listen to this as well, and you can maybe get an understanding for the scale of this whole tornado of dicks. Just have a listen.
To give tight timelines in a situation where it turned out I should not have done that because the matters escalated. In that case, we are looking at 35 players, 6 or 7 teams, We're getting there. Make no mistake. There's amazing material at our disposal here, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time. We're getting access to some fantastic resources, but it's taking time.
Okay, that's a lot.
NACS is not completely dead yet, but it will be, apparently. Jesus Christ,
it's seriously problematic. And bear in mind, guys, that a lot of these players, knowing that they're in the shit in respect of CS, have tried to move to Valorant or have disappeared from the scene. So we're not just working with CS here, and we are getting wonderful cooperation from Riot and Valorant.
How dead is NACS really? I mean,
it's mega dead. That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. Got a couple of good teams still, but yeah, for the most part.
So I keep I still dip my toes a bit into the CS scene, and what seems to help a little bit too now is like you're seeing like this open circuit where there are some open qualifiers to be able to get like a certain slot or whatnot, whether it's like IEM Fall. Or maybe even like the Blast series and stuff like that too. Like even this weekend, there's the Philadelphia event that's happening, or is it next week?
It's also like the ESEA Cash Cups. I think that's
exactly
some of the online competition as well.
So there's still something that's going on. But in terms of like, and that's I think that's what's good, because when you're looking at these type of tournaments now, it's like, okay, well they're playing and they're fighting for something to actually make it into like the pro scene, the circuit, or like something that's going to give you a bigger monetary value in the end. But in terms of like the seasons and the leagues of what we know from like ESEA and SIVA and whatnot, I think that's in a little bit of trouble right now.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out at least to HLTV confirmed, by the way. I love those.
Yeah,
boys.
also, yeah. So, and Ian Smith is the gentleman's name there. He's one of the members on ESIC, a Bristol lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. So this stuff doesn't affect Berlin, right? Because obviously he's mentioned that there are some players. I mean, 35 players is a lot of players. There are obviously players in Valorant that are sort of rumored to be involved here, but it's unlikely we're going to get anything concrete on them to a degree where it would affect Berlin, right?
Yeah.
It could, I guess, retroactively invalidate to some degree results, supposedly, but I mean, it won't interfere with the event itself running.
Yeah. I'm torn on this one, man, and I'm kind of curious y'all opinions about this as well, because I'm really torn on this, because on the one hand, I don't want to see people just get off scot-free if they've done wrong things and they feel like they're just getting away with it by jumping ship to a new game. I do feel like, if you have done something that's shady, potentially unlawful, then you deserve repercussions for that. There should be some type of thing done. But on the same token, on the other hand, I think it could set like a really dangerous precedent if you have cross-game bans, because let's say retroactively we had that, then people like Steel, Brax, and so on and so forth wouldn't be able to have future careers after we feel like the draconian bans they received in CSGO, right? I feel like, sure, if you have a ban that feels fair and then there is still a chance of like redemption at the end of it, then I think people may be more accepting of that. But, in the case of the CSGO bans for the iBuyPower guys like Steel, Brax, Daze, so on and so forth, that felt very draconian. It felt like their careers were robbed of them. And, we were thankful to see that they could go somewhere else and still have a career, right? So I feel like there maybe is a way that it can be implemented where you do like cross game bans, or maybe you just have a bunch of different developers that combine with ESIC or partner with them to let the bans carry over across different developments and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do think the precedent's a bit dangerous if there's just like no hope for redemption or no way to move on with your career or life.
Look, I think it's an easy fix
from one game to another. I don't know.
I think if it's, look, yeah, I mean, that's a valid concern, but it's really easily fixed if you have proportional sort of degrees of punishment. I don't think it's going to be hard to implement. I think you require you need coordination between developers and ESIC, and from developer to developer as well. But there's no reason why there can't be reasonable sort of measures, punitive measures taken here.
But in this case, the bigger thing is these people are facing like real legal trouble, like federal law legal trouble.
So like, if this was in South Korea, they'd be in jail. They would literally be in jail.
So
exactly.
And based on that too, it's like the whole system around like jail, depending how heavy the you're committed for, right? It's still a system that believes in second chances, right? You go to jail for 5 years, whatever, you've done your time, you come out, you try to come out a clean slate, and you try to do better, right? And I feel that again with iBuyPower, with Steel, and all them, they've done. They were made an example, and it was very public. It was like the biggest news back then for the CS:GO scene, and they served their time, right? They were banned for X amount of years from all competitions to eventually be able to play a couple of ESL events, but not majors. Anything that's not a major, they could start playing it again. Now they make the switch to Valorant, and for me, every single one of those players have been pretty much reformed, right? I mean, they've been good role models, and they've been role models around this whole match fixing kind of thing too. But calling out everybody else like fucking dumb, why are you still doing it? Because we already set that example like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Right. And the thing is, right now with this list of alleged 35 players, I'm in between as well, because one, they haven't served their time yet, but the second is that I think they do see like the mistakes that they have potentially made, and that you don't see that type of attitude or that type of thing coming out of their matches being played right now in Valorant, whoever those people are on that list. So I think there's like that mix of like that second chance is already there and they're taking advantage of it too. But I think that there's probably still going to have to be some repercussions if they're found guilty on what has been done in the past, because again, it's federal fucking stuff going on.
And to be clear, there are Valorant players that have been named in this. Players like Marv, Poise, Calypso, Shanks, and others. Those are names that have appeared in this discussion, and obviously those are a couple of those players are on sort of fairly big teams right now. So obviously there's a potential for it to sort of have a pretty big effect on the Valorant scene. But Ian, the first thing Ian says is like, I think my initial estimate was not conservative enough in terms of the time frame to get this sorted out. So they're trying to do their due diligence there, and that's fair enough. Let us depart from this for now, as we don't really have much more sort of, I think, anything to go on. But there is a bit of roster news I think we should probably cover, right? I think that one of the more interesting pieces of news that has come out recently is some of the changes to FPX.
Yeah.
Because obviously they don't make Berlin. They should make Berlin. It doesn't go their way. And a team that was so hyped up and that people were so impressed with this team and going, well, like guys like Angel were able to do here. And so they make changes here. And this is pretty big. Shadow gets dropped from this team, Vans.
Yeah. So now you only have Angel, Shao, and Zipan pretty much left, and their coach is gone too. You're trying to figure out what's going to happen next here for FPX. Are they going to find two other players? But this is an interesting actually topic right now, because we just talked about potentially Valorant coming out to China, where FPX is also a Chinese organization, right? So I feel that there's maybe the potential that the roster in itself, without being potentially represented by FPX, could maybe find two other players and still try to find a new organization. But with their time with FPX be coming to an end, as you're seeing players drop and drop slowly, that could be the case as well, right? I don't know who they might be able to pick up. We still have to figure out what's going to happen after Berlin, when all these teams are not making it to champions and you're like kind of resetting for the next year. Then you'll see if there's going to be some sort of hope left for this FPX core roster, unless they're going to be picked up by another org too. But I think maybe the story of the org might be nearing the end if FPX wants to go back to a Chinese scene.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I know that when they arrived in CSGO, they immediately went for like a North American roster, and then they went for a European roster. So it seemed like they have a lot of interest to not necessarily stick to China, evident from what they have already done in Valorant and what they did in CSGO. So I don't know if they would go back or if they would just try to pick up a couple of new players. But yeah, certainly the core of this team is a team that was kind of consistently considered a top 4 team in Europe, like even dating back to First Strike and going into like the first stage of VTT and such. But when it started getting into needing the challenge for, an Iceland spot, they fell out in 5th, 6th place to Gambit. They obviously weren't able to, get things done this time around for Berlin either, losing out to G2 and taking a 4th place in stage 3. So it's like they're right there on the verge, man. They've always been considered a strong team, but they just can't quite get over the finish line for these big international events.
They're the envy of Europe for me, right? Maybe like on the edge of
that's a fair point.
Right? Almost making a top 3 and never really making it. And what did Envy do? They had to make 2 changes with Marv and Ye coming into the roster. So if they're able to pick up 2 superstars,
it really changed the flavor of that team as well. Those are big.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, I think you're at that point where it's now needed, right? That revamp has to come in. Like sometimes you want to cling on to as much as you can as to like the party parrots or how they were when they first started, right? So, and unfortunately, it's not going to be the case, and hopefully they're going to be able to find those 2 players that's going to make them come back to the top, or at least higher than that 4th place, 5th place.
So all right, let's see what FPX have got up their sleeve here, or whether they blow this thing up or not. Luminosity as well, going the same way, probably for the same reasons, I dare say, right? Recently we've seen that Thieves was, you know, a bit of a mainstay on this team, guys. Like, I really do think that, you know, when he joined up on this team, he was, you know, pretty central to the roster. He was obviously just an absolute cracked out, you know, 1v4 solo site playing Reyna. Like on early Icebox, he would just go to A alone and usually get a couple picks and then just kind of blow the map up there. That Luminosity team really started to shine actually around that time, the start of this year. So Thief, he's on his way out. I prefer to play Duelist. I can play Sentinel, but I don't want to IGL. Yeah, that's what everyone says. Stella, I don't want to play Cypher though. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, okay, JC standing. All right, so Stella, also now Stella, I think you pointed this out earlier, Dust, was actually inactive on this roster for a little bit.
He's been gone. Anyway. He was like playing for Ukers or something like that this last stage a little bit, and even Thief had stood in for version 1. I think it was version 1. Yeah, whenever like Zelsis was serving out his whole like, you know, suspension or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, a lot of these players have already kind of been out the door, and Luminosity's already been kind of showing signs of moving on, right? I mean, they had already brought in Dazzle back in July. Obviously, your boy Dre has been there for quite some time now, since earlier this year. They brought Tig as a stand-in because Moose was injured, I believe it was. And so Tig was like standing in due to Moose's injury. And now you're kind of wondering like, well, you know, maybe they're trying to keep Tig and still re-implement Moose now that he's back from injury, or maybe they're going to pick up another player to replace Ban. So I feel like this kind of shuffling of the team has been kind of going on for the last few months. Yeah, it's just now the official contracts are up, and it's like now pen to paper, done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially when you still had Ben in a roster for a bit, right? But they still decided to go with Tig as the stand-in to play in the last qualifier, right? So that's the other thing too. So I think
they sat Ban because he got a lot of criticism after like the tail end of challenges. Like he got fucking dogpiled on.
Yeah, he was only there for like a month or two, right?
Yeah. He was like, he's sort of cut from the same cloth, I think, as like a Bang and Levi, right? Like these young up and comers with pretty high expectations on them to sort of, you know, make a splash.
Exactly, because he still had some good games too. Like sometimes when you're looking at when he pops off, it's like him and Dre together. It's like, okay, they had the necessary firepower. They have potentially in Ban what they would be missing from Thief if they depart with Thief as well, right? And even if you see Thief going with version 1 to try out, even that, like the cracked out duelist that he played wasn't the solution that was needed here for version 1 to actually qualify too. So I think LG were like just in a sense where they need to figure out a few things, right? With Stellar being gone, they had to find a new IGL. With Moose being injured and Dazzle wanted to play Silva, what can Moose play? Was Moose going to go to a duelist? Your boy Dre also wanted to play a lot more duelist than he did with controller as well. So I think now that they find like the chemistry of the players that they want to play with, now they fix over to like what roles can we actually play, and this is where like this seems to fit the most. Like your boy Dre, Proto, Moose, Dazzle, and Tig. That's who I'm missing right now. Yeah. So I think
Ban goes on to join like a mixed team with Sam and Governor, and they win like a nice month.
Squirtle Squad.
Squirtle Squad, right? Yeah. I think they beat this fucking tragic complexity roster. They just poo on them in the finals. So, it's not even. Yeah, it's not the closest series. So, all right, let's talk about Cloud9 here because this is fascinating to me, and I want to talk about it. So Hunmaru is the manager of like the Valorant side of things at Cloud9. I think he's like a general manager, but they have the academy team, and he's looking for a coach here. So, guys, the question here is what has changed? Because not so long ago, we were talking at length about the lack of there being any fucking point in having an academy team because they can't compete in sort of Riot sanctioned events. But now there seems to be an inclination to spend money on putting these together. So tell me, is it just because of the density of like Knights and NSG tournaments, or could Riot have something in the works that might incentivize the development of an academy team?
It has to be. It has to be. Otherwise, I feel like some of these players that are being willing to play on academy teams will be playing elsewhere. Like, I was kind of surprised some of the people that TSM Academy were able to get because they were players that you would occasionally see, like, competing on the VCT circuit. Now, obviously, they can't, you know, compete in the same tournaments that the actual main TSM roster is competing in. So I feel like if you're a player and you're willing to kind of almost sign away your right to play in VCT in a sense, then there has to be like some reason why you would do that. And so I think there has to be some type of infrastructure coming that makes that make sense.
Yep. Is it okay? So everyone in chat saying a franchise league. Does this mean franchise league, or does this just mean like a circuit for academy teams that actually makes it worthwhile? Because like for example, like the reason maybe why people are match fixing the ESEA Premier is that maybe like the opportunities to go up are limited and the money is not there. But this might be an intent. We are taking another mental leap forward here. But is this a situation of Riot just trying to look to create an ecosystem for Academy? Because we know they're doing that for game changers, right? Obviously, that is for women and underrepresented, gender identity minorities. That's a mouthful. But are they trying to set something up here for Academy, or is it just like a franchise league in general?
I feel it's a little bit of both. I think, if I'm not mistaken, whenever like League decided to like franchise with Riot 2, it was like kind of given to the organizations like last minute as well. Until like, hey, or even like, I don't know if it was the same for you, Mitch, with Overwatch League. It's like, hey, you want to join a league? $20 million. It starts in like 4 months.
There's no way Riot are going to be that dumb. There's no fucking way they're that dumb. Also, like the Overwatch Blizzard support of like the tier 2 scene has been dog shit.
Yeah. But that's why I think the conversations are starting now, right? So it's like, hey, let's start building enough foundation within the next X amount of years, then we can maybe look into that model. I think it's eventually coming. I mean, it's only going to be more beneficial for not only Riot but for all the other organizations as well. Like for example, TSM, who can't really qualify right now to any VCTs, but if they could actually join the franchise, well, at least our branding is officially going to be in there, and the impression is going to be in there more consistently, right? So I think it makes sense in that sense. And then after that, then if you're following the same thing that Riot has been doing with League of Legends, with like the Academy side too, with when we just had Munchables talk about the LPL and then the second league that's in China too, I think we might see that same direction for Valorant.
I think you also need to think about it this way too, guys, is that, in Counter-Strike, there wasn't really a way to discover talent in a lot of different situations, right? Like, yeah, you could kind of just look at players and how well they were competing in semi-pro and amateur leagues. But then it got into another spot where, like, buyouts got insane with some of the contracts. And so being able to recruit talent became hard, either because it was hard to find or because it was so expensive due to, like, absorbent buyouts. So in an academy system, you kind of minimize some of that because now you have official competition that you can watch new upcoming players compete in and kind of see how they are, see how they perform. Not only just because in a certain situation, you might just have to be like, think about it this way, right? If you're a young player, unless you're like some super flashy duelist or something, maybe you don't even really get noticed. Maybe you don't really get
if you're like a role player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so an academy system allows you to kind of see role players for what they are and kind of help discover new talent, maybe avoid like crazy bots, stuff like that. And by the way, you're seeing this happen right now in CSGO. It just happened. It's the We Play league that's going on right now in CSGO. It just started up like maybe a few months ago, where there are academy teams for some European organizations competing for this very reason, to kind of give new young up-and-coming talent an official competition to play in, give you a chance to scout talent, be able to avoid budget crisis by crazy buyouts. And so I think it makes perfect sense infrastructure-wise.
I think if Riot, okay, so I think this is a pretty decent. Galv makes a good point. It's not nuanced. It probably needs a bit of nuance, but so the saying that the franchise model kills young talent. I don't know if that is true, because obviously teams can take from, I think what I would like to see from Riot is a pseudo franchised system with an open component. Let's say, stay with me here. We have a franchise league, but let's say our MSIs feature slots for teams from Academy. Right? They have opportunities to be mixed into, and you can invite teams from your fucking Academy league to compete here. Like, there are opportunities for these lesser known names to get mixed in with top talent at tournaments that have incentives for both the current franchisees and the prospective franchisee players to be involved in, right? I think having a franchise league, which obviously means that relegation doesn't exist, and it closes the system. It turns it into an invite setup. I think invite setups on its own, it's really bad, because you cut your legs out from under you, and you destroy the pathway to pro. Your progression options are really limited. Franchise leagues are very important, though, because it entices brands to be involved, because that element of stability is extremely important in securing return on investment. So a hybridized setup where teams, through the exposure of a franchise league, could still gain exposure, even if they didn't buy a fucking slot or whatever, and have opportunities where they're allowed to compete with them. Because, we have never had an Overwatch League team play against an Overwatch Contenders team, really. Unless it's like an Overwatch team sold their roster and picked up a Contenders roster. And that has happened. But Like we've never had this chance. Or collegiate versus contenders kind of happens in contenders gauntlet. So we get to see that a little bit. And some would call collegiate tier 3 competition. You can sort of see why, maybe because the pool of players is slightly smaller to pick from because they have to be at fucking college, right? But not in every case, right? Maryville are a great example of a team that have like collegiate rosters that can contend with like academy teams and have shown that they can sort of do that. Boise State have a very well built out esports program. Harrisburg has a really well built out program. So you know what I'm saying here? We want to try and eliminate the negatives of a franchise league while also offering stability to brands who want to be involved, because that's where your fucking revenue share comes from. Because Riot doesn't sell broadcast rights, guys. They don't.
Exactly.
I mean, recently, I've heard they might have been shopping broadcast rights around to potential broadcast partners, but in the past, this has not been what they've done. So they've stayed on Twitch, they've maintained presence in the Twitch culture, and their revenue has come from elsewhere, right? If you don't sell broadcast rights, you need to have a pretty strong revenue stream elsewhere, which is why franchise is important. So I don't know what you guys think about that, right?
Pros and cons,
but that's kind of my idea of like a good happy medium.
Yeah, I think then if you're trying to involve like the tier 2 scene with the tier 1 scene somehow, then I think that's where you have to start looking at, okay, what can the relegation process look like, right? But that's where it gets difficult too. Because if, for example, I'm just going to use a random organization name, Team Alex, right? So Team Alex, I'm being relegated right now, and then I lose, and then I go into the lower circuit, but there's still some sort of like ecosystem there that's going to support this org, then perfect. But at the same time, if I keep losing and I keep going down that chain and I'm never going to be able to make it back into the invite league, that's where it gets tough for me as Team Alex, and I would lose my investors then at that point. You try to get back into that. So that's the con of it too, if you want to go with an open system here, chat, and try to have this relegation system too. So we still need to find that happy medium.
Take the NFL, the franchise system, right? They don't really add new teams, but the draft is so robust. The player, it's sad because the player turnover in football is so fucking high because it is so dangerous as a sport.
Everybody gets injured.
The collegiate system is plugged right into the draft and scout. There's like a really well built out scouting process, right? There are events for it. There are combines and drafts and all this sort of stuff. This is this fucking pie in the sky snake oil bullshit that we tried, the Overwatch League tried to sell in the beginning. You know, when Nate Nanzer turned up with his fucking sneakers that, are worn by people 20 years his junior and sort of peddled these ideas, this is kind of, and this is why I bought into it, because I think that you do need a happy medium, but it's not, you can't just be there and be like, no, you know what? I want some of this and I want some of that. And they're just going to be married together and they're going to work in concert. Like that's not necessarily the case. But I hope that Riot, and I think they do a pretty good job with Academy, I think. And it's like proving grounds. So like they have a fairly well fleshed out pathway. Obviously they have problems with imports in NA because every team just wants to stock up on imports from South Korea and from China. And there are other reasons why those regions are strong. But they're doing some things right in my humble opinion.
For sure. For sure.
And you can't have relegations and have brands want to invest.
Exactly.
It's just like it's too risky. Let's talk about something similar though. We want to crack on, Vans.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're getting to the tail end of things here though. Can we talk about F4Q? Because this is so weird. So I don't know if we have the original tweet, maybe we don't. But for those who didn't see it, F4Q tweets that they're partnering up with an NA-based organization. They're going to be playing under their name. Now, who knows what it is? I think if you're a Valorant team and you can secure like a salary for a brief period of time or like a hard cash amount is pretty good, right? I don't know who Solaris is, but it's not uncommon, guys, to see VC go, all right, who's good? Let's give him some fucking money and away we go.
Equinox.
Yep. T1 did the same fucking thing. Oh, we're NBC execs. We got money. Fuck it. Let's buy Faker and Faker's friends. So what do you guys think about this? Because they pulled out, something went wrong. I mean, why would you tweet in the first place?
Oh, that's the best question. Know. Why the fuck are you tweeting about this? No one even knew who the fuck Solaris was. You don't need us to know that you failed in a contract negotiation that we didn't even know that existed. What do you mean?
It's not a good look.
Just shut the fuck up and move on with your life. We don't need to tweet about it. Good lord, it's like tweeting a picture of you taking a shit. No one needs to know that you pooped.
I mean, to be fair, if I drop a foot long, uninterrupted, I want to take I want to take a picture of that. I am proud of it.
100%.
Yeah. I'm fucking. If it's coming out like a soft serve machine, you best believe I'm trying to immortalize.
Yo, Uber, look at this snake.
Dude, I mean, I hate to. I'll be honest with you. I had friends in Australia who did that. Yeah, who actually that is not just made up. So okay, so I mean, Solaris got a bit of publicity from this, but is it possible that there like it
Still
was
have no idea who
basically
that is.
inked and then there was I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it possible that they reneged on it and that like FLQ are not at fault here? Because I mean, look at the fucking Spike.gg sale process. Every fucking Tuesday, I'm being told that they've sold it until they're like, actually, we're quibbling on some finer points here. I still haven't fucking sold that shit, have they?
Yeah, I don't know who Solaris is, man. Because when this was announced, I tried to Google who they were. The only thing that I found was like Solaris Esports. I don't even know if it's the same account.
They haven't tweeted since 2018.
Exactly. And then
it's
their link
Phoenix
is,
One all over again.
Yeah, man. And their profile page or whatever, it's Facebook. So yeah, and then that doesn't exist anymore either. So
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. So
Well, Solaris, you've now gotten the publicity from that tweet and also being mentioned on this show right before footlong shits. So I hope you guys are happy. That's what you get. On that savory note, the proverbials is definitely already been leveraged here in this show. We're fucking done. Yeah, if we don't get cancelled, we'll be back next week to talk about Berlin stuff. We can't co-stream it because we're just not appropriate. We're not a culture fit for Riot, I think, guys. So sorry about that. But great to have you on the show, Dust. Real pleasure to finally get you here, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's coming up for you, man? What's next?
Nothing. A lot of nothing right now. Hopefully, I'm obviously hopeful to do more Valorant stuff with VCT or just whatever the future holds in 2022. None of us know if VCT will get completely restructured at that point or if it'll continue on as it has been throughout 2021. I mean, there's a lot of mystery out there, right? But
I mean, every caster is shooting themselves in Valorant right now. I know that.
So I mean, obviously, I enjoy the game. I feel like I've been doing well, so I'd like to keep doing that. But we'll just have to see what happens. But as of right now, nothing planned.
still have our support here, Dust. You still have our support.
Yeah,
Much love.
absolutely.
Much love.
It's nice to get on the show as well. Nice to get a bit more spice here as well. And I don't have to seem like a fucking unhinged dickhead all the time, or at least the only one. Vance, you prick, you fucking softy. What's coming up with you? Huh?
Not much, man. Just probably gonna do some streams here and there, watching some VODs, watching Berlin throughout the weekend, and then prep up for Tuesday. And then
Are you gonna be on a watch party at all?
I don't think so. I haven't been in contact with anybody. Nobody's contacted me,
Okay.
so I'm probably just gonna chill out. Maybe watch it with everybody else. I'm actually quite happy in a sense. Like I'm optimistic, optimistic silly. Is that for once I don't have to like spend 60, 70 hours of watching VODs and prepare, and I could just enjoy and see what it's like from like the production side, from a spectator's side, and maybe come out with some like some ideas or suggestions that I can bring back to the necessary people.
Nice use of coke.
I think
man. It's nice use of coke.
Yeah.
I think I'm fucking work. I mean, Berlin's over this weekend. I think I'm working Brawl Stars, so I'm gonna try and
Must
catch
be
the
nice,
Berlin
mate.
stuff.
Must be nice to work.
Yeah, mobile games, baby. Yeah, that's the future. You guys like 3v3 MOBAs on mobile, made by Supercell? You check it out. Anyway, let's wrap this up, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. A big shout out to Joe as well, Munchables, and of course Mike's HD for coming on the show. Next week, obviously the week of September the 12th, we're gonna have a lot to talk about here with what's going on in Berlin. It's gonna be a huge show. So hang in there until then. Enjoy what goes on in Berlin, and thank you all for watching as per usual. See you next week.